Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal Podcast. Our guest today is Jeremy Barker. Jeremy is the founder CEO of Murphy Door. He is a firefighter turned entrepreneur. Jeremy built Murphy Door into America's number one hidden door brand, driving 1 billion plus in social views and over 117% in year over year growth. And he launched Pure Brand to reinvent customer trust. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. And before I say anything, thank you for your services as a firefighter.
I appreciate you a lot for having me on. And like I said, it was an honor to do that career. So it's hard to get a thank you for something you love, but we'll take it.
No worry. Before we get started, I'm going to socialize the topic with our audience in a moment. If you could just give a quick intro to yourself and your company, I
Sure.
think that'll be a good place to go kick this off.
Absolutely. I'm Jeremy Barker, and I'm the founder and CEO of Murphy Door. We're the nation's largest builder of hidden door, rooms, secret spaces, panic rooms. We do one unit every 6 minutes currently with over 150,000 customers now around the world. So that's one. And then I'm a serial entrepreneur per se. I've got Pure Brand software, Murphy Ladder. I've got about 500,000 square feet of of commercial real estate and a hotel. So I just can't get enough of business. I love it. I've won some, lost some, and I love the whole ride. So that's it. Give me them
Okay.
all.
Oh, that's lovely. I just pulled it up in the background. So, we'll include the link to your company, on the podcast, obviously. So I think I just did a quick screen share here so folks actually have seen it at least for a second. Let me stop sharing. Okay. Yep, I think we are good. So, the topic, right? The couple of them that you had mentioned there, Jeremy, each is as interesting as the other. So we'll just get started with one and we'll see
Sure.
where the conversation takes us the next 45 minutes to an hour. And again, while we talk, please feel free to interrupt me. I might do the same, so apologies. Okay, the two topics loosely that we've defined here are why Yelp style reviews are broken and how live customer conversations drive higher conversions, right? And how AI turns those interactions into actionable insights. So that's one thing. The second part of the second topic, slightly different but just as interesting to me, is lessons from bad partnerships, why most founders rush equity decisions, and how to structure collaborations that actually scale, right? So that is the second item. So they are very different from each other. So we'll start with the first one, right? Why Yelp style? Look, actually, before you even go there, you mentioned that you are a serial entrepreneur, right? So let's talk about that for a second. Now, what is it that you've done in the past from an entrepreneurial standpoint, Jeremy? And if
Sure.
you can walk us through quickly to what you're doing currently, and then call out for some of the challenges, because while our audience is predominantly an engineering audience, and your business is a slightly different business from what we do at Snowpal here, which is an API company. You mentioned that you also have a software component to it, right? So I want to talk about your business minus the software component initially, and then we'll just talk about the software component right after.
I love that you brought it up that we're designatedly different, I guess, in the sense of what business product we're selling. But ultimately, I don't care if we're making cookies, making hidden doors, or making software. The core principles of business are all the same. And that's what's been so surprising to me as I've grown in experience and education through my wins and my losses of business. It's super interesting to see truly when I've discredited mentors in the past, like when I was younger, and I'll tell you that piece of the story. I didn't feel like I could find anybody that could understand my business because I'm uniquely my business, I felt. And as I've gotten older, I realized that ultimately we're all running a same kind of balance sheet, profit and loss. Yes, margins are different, sales strategies are different, and revenue streams may be different. But ultimately, we truly desire to do business that creates some type of product or service, which all correlatively ends up the same. So, to give you a little bit of my entrepreneurial journey, like I had a really interesting childhood. My dad was a VP at one of the largest stockbroking firms, made a ton of money, didn't understand the value of money. I'd get a go kart for an A. Like, you got an A on a report card. Here's a go kart. Like, I didn't understand that, there was value to the dollar because it was just rewarded, right? And I always had it around me. And then when the market crashed in 87, we went from wealth to literally welfare overnight. Like, my dad had all his money in the market. We went broke, and that was it. And it was a rude awakening because now I couldn't get a go-kart for an A for one, or whatever I was aspiring to have for working hard in school. How come I'm not getting rewarded with these absurd gifts for just doing my best in school? So um, my mom, on the other hand, my dad was a broker. My mom cut hair. She did porcelain dolls. She did sculptures. She always peddled little things. Like, she was always a hustler. She's from France, so my first language was French. My dad was from the U.S. His dad's Italian, was adopted, but big, different background. Nonetheless, when I got 18 years old, I thought, hey, you know what? I want to be white collar. I didn't have any desire to do blue collar work with construction hands or firefighting or any of that crap. I did get my EMT early at 18. I realized that there was no money in that blue collar job at the time. Got a job at a fire department, lasted 3 weeks, and I said, hey, this paycheck's not enough for this job, so I bounced. I was a trouble kid, kind of, when I growing up in Utah. Utah's highly Mormon, and I was more of a problem child. So my mom kicked me out to New York. That was the winter of '93, miserably cold. I'm like, why the heck am I moving to New York when it's so freaking cold here? I'm just going to find some other thing. But my buddy's friend's dad offered me a job doing construction. I thought, this is a way out of New York. I can't come home, so I'm going to go to Colorado and do commercial construction. In that little lesson, it taught me how to work. Like, I was doing, normally you'd go work I worked at Hardee's and Denny's and little jobs like that you'd lucky to get an 8-hour shift. This guy would work 24 hours and 48 hours straight. He had a little teeny crew trying to do grocery store remodels. We'd stay at work forever. So he taught me the principles of hard labor and hours. So I had a little bit more appreciation. On top of that, I was only making like $6.50 an hour, and I was getting more money on overtime than regular pay. So I was starting to understand that hours and money don't always correlate, but in addition to it, made me appreciate the efforts. And in that skill set, I learned a little bit about construction. And I thought, you know what? I do not want to do construction at all. I'm going to go home, go to school, get a degree, beg for forgiveness from my mother, say, hey, look, I promise I'll try not to be a bad kid. And she let me come back, all the graces to her. So I got back, and one of my neighbors asked if I could build a wooden storage shed. And so I'd never built a shed, but I'd built a lot of walls. I figured this can't be hard. I went down to a local shed builder here in Salt Lake, got the idea of like, hey, this is how you build the walls, the trusses, and so on. But I noticed every one of their doors were twisted at the top open, and so the weather could come down through the top of the plywood door. And I thought, hey, this is something that could be easily fixed. So I invented a metal frame that went on the inside of the shed doors, which, by the way, are in all shed doors worldwide now. That was when I was 18. That was my first patent. So every shed door, I know how silly that is, but when you open a wooden shed, they have a metal frame. And it just told me that, look, even at 18 years old, you can create something that hasn't been created or hasn't been monetized. It's not saying I was the first one to ever do that, just the first one to monetize it and patent it. But at the end of the day, that business I grew before I was 21 years old to 20 million in top line. And then we're talking in 1995, 96, we're earning that top line. So the thing that I understood was, one, I figured out I got tickets for manufacturing in a residential neighborhood, contracting without a license. I didn't know I need to have business insurance. I didn't understand all the intricacies of creating a business, and it wasn't as searchable as it is today on the internet. So I learned lessons the hard way. And one thing I learned early was how to market, how to sell. I landed Home Depot super fast. I was one of the youngest people. I think I was the youngest at the time that had ever signed a contract to supply Home Depot. I was barely 19 years old at this stage and supplying Home Depot wooden sheds. So that's what really kind of catapulted our sales piece. Now, the other thing that I didn't realize I didn't know was how to do accounting. I never knew how to do accounts receivable, accounts payable, and we were on a really rudimentary, QuickBooks software back then. And I didn't pay my taxes on time. I didn't pay my payroll taxes like I was supposed to. And I was partying like a crazy young 22-year-old with way too much money. And then when the music stopped, we called music stop the proverbial winter is coming. Well, while winter hits the West, it shuts the outdoor shed business down. Well, my cash flow didn't keep up with my outgo. Needless to say, rather than calling my vendor saying, hey, I've been robbing Peter to pay the party, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to work this out. I just kind of stuck my head in the sand. Needless to say, between that and trying to my first partnership agreement was I thought I would franchise this model. And by the way, I didn't understand franchise law or what it meant. I just knew I wanted to sell my Phoenix plant or my Vegas plant or one of these plants, so I didn't have the headache, and see if I could get some money back in to pay the bills I didn't pay. And I did get a partner, and I did get somebody to come and liquidate all my assets, collect all the money that Home Depot owed me, which made my financial situation even more dire. And then I just stuck my head in the sand, avoided phone calls, tried to sue, ran out of money to pay the attorney, and then I lived in my car for a year. So filed bankruptcy. That was my first bankruptcy. I've been bankrupt 2 times, by the way. So that was bankruptcy one, and I was 22, 23 years old. And I wanted to do something to get the heck out of the neighborhood that was judging me, right? Everybody was like, I told you, you were a loser, you party animal, it's all your fault, you've got issues. So I just wanted to tuck tail and hide. So I ended up just living in my pickup truck, showering at truck stops, and I did it for a year. And there was a part of there, the first 6 months, you hate yourself and you just want to commit suicide. I tried twice, by the way. Fortunately, that it wasn't successful. But after about 6 months of taking the inventory of all the bad decisions that I've made, and there was a lot, I did recognize that we made some good ones. Like, obviously, to get to that type of revenue at that age in those years was extremely rare. So I'm like, look, I did something that a lot of people tried to do. Yes, I was extremely successful on building the business, extremely bad at managing the business. So in the future, if this was to occur, how would you avoid those kind of problems? And I spent 6 months trying to digest it. And then after 6 months, I'd forgiven myself. I became my own best friend because I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have anything to distract myself from my own brain, like getting into the waller and really trying to digest that stuff. And about 6 months after becoming my own best friend, I left, and I decided I gave myself a year in my car, and I did it a year to the day. I'm like, look, I got to go do something different. I'm ready. I'm healed. I'm ready to go tackle these bears, and got a job as a superintendent working for a home builder here in town. And that was enough to build my confidence. I was able to deliver and see what I can do in the construction industry. Again, completely opposite of what I thought I didn't want to do when I was younger. But I realized that there was some earning potential. And I built a home building business with excavation components and commercial building. So we were doing some heavy jobs and built that up to 30 million in top line. And then 2007 hits, 2008 hits, and the recession hits. The banks that we were working with go bankrupt. Literally, I mean, now where do we get our money that is owed for these building jobs? And that was my second bankruptcy. We literally couldn't get the money to pay anybody on all these big developments we were building. And so that one I didn't quite feel as bad. I couldn't get the money from the banks that owed me money. So we were the casualty. Now, I am taking accountability that we probably could have done a little bit more due diligence, figured out a couple different methods. I mean, we always are participatory and also accountable for some of the actions. So I have to own some of it. But that being said, it wasn't as detrimental to my mental health as the first time. So that was my second entrepreneurial adventure. Immediately, I'm like, look, I need to get my kids' insurance. I need to pay my house payment. And I thought, you know what, I'll go back to fire. Public service is always safe, especially when you're in an economic downturn. You got insurance, you got retirement, you got a paycheck. They're not good paychecks. They're far from good. But it gave me an opportunity to at least have peace of mind to settle in that my kids were covered with health care and dental and vision and have a paycheck to pay something. Now, because I'm so good at math, my house payment was $2,300 a month, and my net check was, I think, $1,532 a month. So really short of even just my mortgage. So I had to do a bunch of second jobs, third jobs, which also included part-time fire jobs, door-to-door sales, as well as doing construction whenever I had time, because you could make some pretty good money doing cement or tile or roofing or whatever. In about 2012, this puts me about 4 or 5 years post the downturn, I decided I'm going to start building a theater room in my unfinished basement for my kids. So this is where that Murphy door thought process came from. I wanted to kind of put together a theater room door that looked like a ticket booth, kind of like remember the what are they called? Fortune tellers. You used to put a quarter in and the lady would give
Right.
you a card, and they're kind of an octagon booth. I thought that would be a fun door to put in the theater room. Now, I'm a firefighter at the time. So when I say theater room, this is a 4 folding chair size theater room. I think it's 9 by 11. So I'm not getting exorbitant, and
Right.
it's really underwhelming per se. But I thought, well, if I can't do a cool theater room, at least I could make a cool experience for our kids to go through the theater room door that their friends would think is fun. They could give them a ticket through the booth, have a now showing little sticker above the door, and make it kind of interactive for them. And then they could go sit down on their metal fold out chairs or whatever. So that was the basic concept in Murphy Door. And I got online couldn't find much of other companies doing hidden doors. Now, hidden doors have been around since forever. I mean, as long as you can think of, but no one really had taken it and created a mass scale enterprise out of secret rooms, panic rooms, hidden doors, or any of that stuff. And so I thought, wow, if I'm a poor firefighter wanting to do this, I'm sure there's other people on the planet that want to do the same. And they're probably going through the same struggle and frustration that I'm going through to try to find somebody to do it. This is a great opportunity. One, two, there was no real hardware to make these type of bookcase systems work. So being a little bit inventive and having some history and some steel manufacturing from my shed company, I decided to design a hinge that would make these doors pivot and bifold and all the stuff. So that was another patent that we created. We went out, we looked for other patents that we were conflicting, otherwise known as a freedom to operate, and there wasn't any. So I thought, hey, look, I can do this hardware business and do my fire career, because I had no desire truly to leave fire ever. I loved the job. I loved how it felt. I loved the brotherhood. There was nothing I didn't love. So we went out. I thought I'll build hardware, and we did 30,000 in 2013 in hardware sales with 500% margins. So it was great. They were built in the US by a local manufacturer. And I'm like, man, I just brought in 20 some odd $1,000 in net profit. And I'm not a taker out of my business. I fully believe in leaving every penny the business generates for the first 5 years in the business. I don't care how big you're scaling, but you shouldn't be a parasite to your business early. You need to let that milk feed the baby. And that's all there is to it. So I'm good at that piece. But I thought, well, if that's the case, this could be something that's better than I thought. Then all of a sudden people started asking for, like, I want you to build my door. I'm like, shoot, I don't know how to build cabinets. I have no idea. That is new to me. So we ended up looking around and finding a cabinet company that could teach us how to build a cabinet and then do it at some type of scale. So something that was pretty basic, standard sizes, standard wood offerings, and then we could offer those online. Now, keep in mind, I didn't have a catalog of product. I had like one door that I'd ever built and a whole bunch of bookcases that I pretended to make look like doors with green screen on the internet sales page, right? So I knew that I could build the bookcase if they chose something like that, but we had never done it. And so God bless the first 1,000 customers that helped us like get some cash to create some type of catalog. But that was really the launch. So we went from 30,000 the first year, 150 the second year, 1.1 million the third year, all working full-time fire, 2.2, and then up to almost 5 million in my fifth year. Again, I didn't take any money in the Murphy door world for 5 years. And then now we've pretty well doubled every year ever since, and if not more.
That's enough. I didn't want to interrupt you there, just so I didn't want to interrupt your flow of thoughts there, Jeremy. That you have an incredible memory. You almost like, what you've said here captures the last not just many years. I reckon, probably more than a couple of decades of what you've done, right? Growing up, where you lived, the early life, the formative years, and then how you've come about to where you are at today. So much appreciate you sharing that. It's an incredible story. So there's a lot to unpack there. In the next 45 minutes, I'm going to ask you a bunch of things. Hopefully, they don't seem random, but it is my takeaway from what I've heard, from what you've said. And I try to take notes where I can. But you spoke, you said a number of things I had. There's no way I could take notes here in the interest of not missing on what you said. So I'm going to go with what I remember, and correct me if
Great.
I'm getting some of these wrong. So here's the crux of what I got from a lot of what you mentioned there, right? You
Okay.
grew up fairly wealthy, and then things changed, right? You mentioned the stock market crash, where things changed. They went south. So you went from being affluent as a child to not so affluent, right? And then you said you started early businesses. Some did all right, some not so much. So there's a lot of your initial years seem like there was a bit of a roller coaster ride in them, right?
Oh,
For the
yeah,
most part,
for
right?
sure.
Right, and then things started to stabilize, and then you have the upward curve now. So congratulations on that. But I want to talk about many aspects of this journey. Essentially, one of my first questions is, we'll get to the topic I loosely mentioned hopefully at some point, but given what you've said there, one of my first questions to you, Jeremy, is, I'll give you some context here, right? I grew up studying engineering. I went to college. It was a very traditional path per se. My first job was in software engineering, and that's all I've been doing for the past 20 years. And I want to start a company because I love building software. Many years ago, I felt like I've built enough experience to go and start a company. And I did, we did some consulting initially, and then 5 years ago, we launched our first product, and then we are on our fourth product. And there's no dearth of challenges we run into. I want to share some of them with you as we go. But I want to call out for that experience being it's less exciting compared to your story, right? It's a very boring, mundane, traditionalish type of story here. But that being the context, I want to ask you something. I started the company because I loved software engineering. That's all I had done. I probably didn't have other skills, and that is the only thing I could possibly even do when I started a business, right? It's not like I was comparing three different things or three different options or scenarios there. Your story, the way I interpret your story, Jeremy, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that your interest was less. I'm paraphrasing, right? My learnings here. So again, please feel free to correct me. Your interest was less in actually selling doors necessarily, but your interest was more in building a business, right? It didn't matter what business
100%.
it was. Would that be a fair summary, right? Because I have a question related.
100% right. We tried really hard to find something that would be subsidizing my fire world. And so I was always on the look of what could I do to supplement it. So yes, dead on.
Okay, and that's very important because a lot of the challenges I've run into or we've run into at Snowpal, while when we launched the company, Jeremy, we thought it'd be purely engineering challenges, right? But as you
Yep.
can probably imagine, soon enough, it was not. I mean, we sure do have our engineering challenges, but that is something that we are familiar with, right? So we back ourselves in fixing those issues and chugging along. But there are a number of other things we've stumbled into that I had no idea. You mentioned sales, you mentioned marketing. So I want to talk more about those types of things. But my first sort of question to you is when you arrive at a business, not actually, that's not driven by your core interest necessarily, what are you looking for? Is it like, what would be some of the initial steps? Are you looking to see, hey, let me do a research, the typical what they teach you in college, find out what kind of demand there is, go do some surveys, focus groups, yada, yada, yada. But that seems like a lengthy process, right? If you could sort of educate us as to what were some of those initial steps you took before you launched this, the last of your, the most recent of your businesses, selling doors, and what were some challenges you stumbled into? And I'll interrupt you there to just learn more about those.
Yeah, 100%. So I've never graduated from college other than I got my paramedic, right? So I didn't do business other than the degree of hard knocks. Like the school of hard knocks is all I've got. So I'm pretty basic with some type of high level because I had that opportunity to make a significant amount of money early. I mean, you think about this in the realms of business, only about 5% of the companies ever break $1 million in top line. And only about 0.4% of businesses ever break $10 million in top line. That's one out of every 250 businesses, right? So that's very rare. And I thought, man, I did that by the time I was 20. This is crazy. What do I have to offer? How did I look at things differently? Obviously, I didn't have a whole lot to offer other than hustle. Like I just knew how to work because of my boss. And that's why I told you that little construction piece. 48-hour shifts is nothing. Like it is what it is. I can stay awake for days. So what can I do better than other people? Well, maybe outwork. So I knew I had some type of credit. The simple math that I do is like, if I want to make $1 million, what does it look like? So as easy as that is for me, is I take, okay, what is my average ticket price? What is that million divided by my average ticket price? How many customers does that serve? And then where do I live? So let's say my average ticket price at Murphy Door is $2,000. Well, I only need to build 5,000 doors, right? Or whatever that number is, right? And so I'm like, is it 500? Yeah, that's it. $2,000, 500 doors. Not a big deal. That's less than I live in a teeny little town in Morgan, Utah. If I could sell 500 people there, there's a $1 million top line business, put me in the top 5% of companies. So I'm like, well, can I sell to 500? Yes. So every business that I look at is like, what does it take to get to 1 million, 10 million, 30 million, 50 million? And I know that
Okay.
those sound absurd, but I just take what is my offer? What is the quantity of customers that I need to hit my goal? Setting my first goal at 1 million, then second at 10. And does this have a pathway that's greater than? So I think some of the people look at like, if I could sell this product, you've heard this pitch before, I'm sure. Hey, this is $1 million idea. And I'm like, well, I'm out then because $1 million is not enough to last me 30 years, right? I've got to have something that's multi-million so I can have a business that lasts me my career. If it's only $1 million idea, unfortunately, if that's the total length of the product idea that you're or service idea that you're doing, I don't see it. But I'm a
So
firm believer.
so Jeremy,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
what you're talking about there is when you say 1 million is the idea, you're talking about the total addressable market, right? How much
Great.
money can I put? What is the market for this business essentially? So let's say we're talking about doors here. I'm going to ask you some silly questions, but they
Please.
come from the right place. Just trying to relate the business to the business that I'm familiar with, and going from there, right?
Yep.
So what is the like if I were to start a door business, not knowing anything about selling doors? Here are some of my initial questions, right? I'm going to
Okay.
be like, okay, what am I bringing that's different
Unique.
to the table, right? Like, in other words, there's Home Depot, there's Lowe's, there's probably a million or tens of hundreds of other places that can sell these doors or that probably are already selling these doors. So what did you think was the moat that you were bringing to the table, and how did you? That's the first part of the question. And two, how did you communicate that unique selling proposition to your potential first customers, right? The first, the second, and the third customers.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great question. So one, when I did my research to find my own door, I couldn't find anybody selling them. So that's where my identifier is like, hey, wait, I'm looking and I'm just a poor firefighter looking for a hidden room. Imagine people that have money. I'm sure they've thought this through. We've all wanted to be Batman and Iron Man and Barbie doors or whatever. You've got man caves and speakeasies. Like, why is no one in this marketplace that I can personally find online? So that was the first kind of aha moment. Second, so my
Sorry,
unique
hang on,
identity.
Jeremy. Sorry. So it
Yeah,
means it's not like any door. It's actually like a specific. It's a specific
yeah,
type of door that you're selling.
yeah, 100%. So we make hidden rooms, hidden walls. So we make the doors that pivot, the walls that pivot, and take you in, so you don't even know the doors really are there.
Ah, I see what you mean. Sorry, I missed that part
Don't
there.
worry
So
about it.
that okay.
That's
So
common.
that's okay. So that's the unique selling That's a moat right there, right? So there are
Yeah,
people selling doors, but I don't even know if Home Depot or Lowe's actually sell the kind of door you're talking
they
about, right?
didn't.
Probably
Yeah.
they didn't, right? Okay.
So knowing that they didn't, so I got to rewind a little bit back to the shed world. So when I started selling Home Depot sheds, remember I'm 19-ish, maybe late 18, early 19, and I'm going over there, and they had, I don't know if you remember, back in the old days, the hardware stores put the shed fronts on the wall. This is a
Okay.
house style shed. This is a barn style shed. Which
Hmm.
style do you like? Well, they said, hey, we're going to put you in store, they being Home Depot. And I thought, and I had to buy the displays. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to pay for these wall displays. I don't have any capital at all. Right. So, how do I fund this business? One, I was getting deposits from every customer and then the payment on completion. Home Depot doesn't do that. And then here they want to write an order for me to go put all these displays in. So, I had to pivot the mindset and say, hey, look, number one, you're buying my sheds because the product differentiator in the wooden shed industry from the other people out there was my metal frame on the inside of the door that kept doors from warping. So I said, look, if you're going to put my shed up on the wall, you can't open the door to see the metal frame. So it needs to be down on the ground. And because of our product, at the time we launched all the Home Depots. The reason Home Depot has sheds in the lawn and garden department is because of a 19-year-old kid from Centerville, Utah, that did not have any money to put the displays on the wall. So I convinced the buyer from Home Depot to put sheds in the lawn and garden department, which they thought was an absurd idea, by the way. I'm like, look, you can get product awareness, you can get size, you get an understanding of space, and you get to see the metal frame on the inside of the door. I got that from a cost piece, being that I had to pay for displays, to a pivot to where I got a purchase order for every one of those displays I was being delivered, or I was delivering to the Home Depots. So I realized at that time I can be 19 years old and convince the largest home improvement supplier in the world to pivot their mindset to. Right. So
Okay.
that gave me that concept. Meaning, when I got to the Murphy door world, I had no fear that I would eventually convince Home Depot to supply hidden doors to the market. It took a while. It wasn't as easy as my 18-year-old brain thought it was back in the day. I mean, obviously I was 35 years old when I started Murphy Door, but at the same time, it was like, well, this will be quick. I'll get them convinced why everybody should have a hidden room, not only for secret doors, but for space. Now, functional furniture, functional cabinetry in a doorway that can have, storage inside and be a door. So I can convince them in a couple different pathways. That was one of the main reasons, is not having a fear of who my customer base is. And even though it was a whole new product category, we've had to develop freight codes. We've had to develop all the things for, like, the federal transportation. Like, they needed to know what it is we're hauling. We created that whole shipping code. It's just been a ride for sure.
Okay. So Jeremy, I'm going to couple of things, right? I want to make sure I didn't miss that. So the first thing is the unique selling proposition, your moat was you're selling hidden doors. Not everybody was selling them. So that's the first difference, right? You're not just going to sell any door, but you're selling a particular kind of door to make that separation. Now, after
Correct.
you decided and narrowed down on that business per se, what was the immediate next step? I'm asking this mostly, wearing two different hats. One is as a college student from years ago, decades ago,
Hmm.
who went through these classes of how you're supposed to start a business, and the other hat is somebody who's done this 5 years ago and gone through a different set of challenges altogether, something I don't think I could pick up from those books, right? So
Yeah, right.
with that in mind, I want to ask you what, that, yeah, if you could answer that question there.
I would, yeah, 100%. So you know what they say, those who write books don't do, right? Those who, I mean, most of the time, those who teach
R-
don't do or don't know how to do.
right.
So needless to say, so for me, the first step was number one, is there a product? I started researching because I wanted something in my home. I identified the product because I couldn't find it. I'm like, okay, if I'm looking and I just use myself as a normal blue collar firefighter Joe looking for something unique, and I thought, wait a second, if I can't find it, there's got to be more than 500 people that want it in this world. I mean, we're talking a world of 7 billion or whatever the number is, right? An absurd amount. I'm like, I know I could sell 500 doors. Can I sell 5,000? Can I sell 50,000? Probably. Like, I think any business, I don't care what you're selling, can do 10 million and even 100 million. It just depends on your
But hang
desire.
on,
Now,
Jeremy, what told you that? Sorry. What told you that there was that need? How did you arrive at the total addressable market? Or did you not care for what it is
I,
and you're like,
I
let me start selling?
so I looked at it as simple as if I want it and I'm just this guy that's not creative in the sense of artistic or do I care about fancy houses, I guarantee you people that do care about that stuff want it more than I do. So I just use
And
that
then
simple framework. I didn't use anything more creative.
makes sense because it's more pragmatic, right? You're not trying to spend hours and days and weeks or whatever trying to research. Because I listened to a podcast recently where one of the software founders, I don't know if it's Anthropic or one of the on Airbnb. I think I heard a
Hmm.
story where he said, if I'm not wrong, that you don't, not everybody's handing out surveys and doing all kinds of research. You want to get the product right. If it's He was talking about a software product, but like you said at the top of this podcast, it's it's a business essentially, right? Whether it's potatoes or doors or software, there are differences, but there are also some similarities in how you're running these businesses, right? So you decided, okay, this is what I want to sell. I don't care what the total addressable market is. If I can let me start selling a certain number of those doors. So what was the next thing? Were you looking to regionalize this or localize it to sell to people in your neighborhood, or how did you go
Never.
about that?
I've never thought of my neighborhood as my selling market. In any business that I thought, I've always said, "Hey, look, Utah being small, like it's bigger now, but when I grew up, it was a smaller community. So I never thought of Utah as my addressable market. I thought of LA, New York, Miami, places that have high density of people, and trying to think, okay, what is it that I could do to big cities? I don't need to be here. I can be anywhere with logistic opportunities, be it shipping or whatever else. I don't need to look at my neighborhood. And I think sometimes we get so close because the only thing we feel like we understand is our neighborhood. With my shed opportunity, I was able to be in Phoenix, Las Vegas, and I got to kind of get an exposure of what bigger cities look like or bigger states look like, and seeing how big the economy is in comparison to my little teeny neighborhood of Centerville, Utah at the time. So I've always, just to your point, super pragmatic. I mean, I don't have a lot of the education, nor would I say what is my total addressable market, because I didn't have the education to ask that question. I
And
just
which
knew
could
that
be a
my
good thing, right, Jeremy? Let me ask you that. I had a different question,
yeah.
but since you mentioned education there, I've always felt, I was in college longer than I want to admit, to be honest with you. It was about 8 years, I think. And after I graduated, my first job, I started, I was doing a programming job, but a lot of what I learned in college was not just programming, right? There's a lot of other things that relate to engineering, which I never honestly ever put that into practice. It made no difference to me. So I always ask myself, could I have actually gone to college for fewer years, or perhaps not gone to college at all, right? But the world I grew up in, it
That's
was
what you
not even
do.
an option, right? It was not even an
Yeah.
option. You had to go through the motions of life. But then I figured, Jeremy, personally, college gives you some comfort, which is a double-edged sword. And here's what I mean by that: it gives you a job that has those benefits and whatnot, right? You get paid a certain amount of money,
Golden
and then you
handcuffs.
correct, exactly, right? Golden handcuffs, right? Because you forget what you actually want to do in life, and you sit there or in a cube or whatever it is, right? And I saw a video recently of somebody who's like a very beautiful 3-minute clip on Instagram. where they give him a square. There's a kid who gets out of college. They give him a 2 by 2 foot tile. They say, stand here. I'll pay you money for 8 hours a day. And then 2 years later, they give him 3 by 3 and say, I'll pay you more money. And then 10 years later, it's like a much bigger square, right? And then he keeps standing there. And the time he actually gets out, he's like 75. And he's like, you know what? I don't have any energy to do anything more. I thought it was very, it was a good analogy, right? Even if it was a little bit more exaggerated. I very much appreciate what you shared there. So I want to get your thoughts on, did you ever feel like, oh my God, I didn't go to college, I didn't go to Harvard to learn business, I would have done things differently? Or you were like, you know what, I'm actually happy I didn't spend time doing that, so I could learn them pragmatically and then knock on doors to sell doors actually. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, knock on door to sell a door. But I've always had to defend my lack of going to school. Growing up in Centerville, Utah, everybody went to college. I graduated in high honors. I had great grades. Student body president in my junior high. You know, I mean, like I had all these credentials, but I hated the idea of anybody telling me what to do. That was my problem. Like I was super hard headed. Did not like the idea that people could tell me what to do, and I also felt that with school, my end goal of school was to make money. Well, because of the shed business, I forgot one piece of the story. When I got done building my first neighbor's shed and then a couple others in the neighborhood, I did the state fair. And during the state fair, I sold just over $60,000 in sales in 10 days. And I thought, wait, I'm going to college to make 60,000 a year. I literally just generated 60,000 with $30,000 in deposits. It was actually over 30. I got like 32,000 in deposits because I went and spent it on a truck. That was mistake number one, because I'm just young and dumb. But anyway, I'm like, so I'm like, wait a second, I just made 60,000 in 10 days. So why in the Sam heck do I want to go to college? I can do this. That was my goal, money, right, is to be comfortable with school. So I was in school, enrolled at the University of Utah, doing my first semester there. And I'm like, this I don't need. I don't need school to do my ultimate goal, which is to earn enough money to be comfortable or greater, right? I want to get back to where I was when my dad was younger and we made money. That's what I want.
So,
So,
Jeremy, have you had? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I want to get
no,
a
you're fine.
lot. I'm going to ask you a lot more. I want to make sure if you have more time, I'm happy to,
As long as you want to run.
chug
Okay.
along, right? Because your story is very interesting and it's very unique as well. I'll be honest with you. Our podcasts are. It's very. I'll tell you, there's a lot of things you bring to the table here already, which is very different and unique, and it's very important for me to understand and for our audience
Yep.
to understand. Before we get into the AI and the software side of things. So okay, you said a state fair, you made some money, that you would have possibly spent in college. Just the last couple of questions there is, in your life so far, have you ever had any regrets about not actually going to college and getting a formal degree?
I'm thankful I didn't, and here's why. So 2 years ago, we won at the International Builders Show from the National Association of Home Builders, the #1 indoor product of the year. We beat Halo, Genie, Sony, Apple, these Fortune 500 groups, big, huge sledgehammers. Here's a country bumpkin that didn't graduate from nothing with a bunch of kids that are on my executive team. Not one, except for our CFO, has gone to college or graduated from college. And I think what happens is we go to school to learn how to do, and they work inside this algorithm per se. And I'm just generalizing, let's say, because I didn't go to school. So I'm just saying what I think. So I'm probably 100% wrong. Defend yourself. That's great. Not you, but everyone else in school. I'm just saying, well, it's whatever. But in my heart, like when I walked up to take the trophy and you see all these Fortune 500 sitting down there going, what the Sam hell just happened? Who is this guy? Where did he come from? Well, we just never were taught what we should do or what we shouldn't do with some kind of algorithmic box. We just said, hey, look, we should do this. We didn't have education to tell us that we couldn't do it. So we just did it. And then we realized, hey, this is what we're building. This is what we think the world wants. We're pretty receptive to feedback because we're sensitive, hence why Pure Brand came around. But at the same time, it's like, what is it that we offer? Well, what we offer is an open mind. We'd never had the walls built that said, hey, this is the way, if this, then that type of statements that college teaches you, at least what I learned in paramedic school. It's like, hey, this, if this, then that. Well, if we don't know the if this then that statements, then we just kind of work our way through it. And to be honest with you, the best results come from the hardest times, right? Hardest times that break you down, build the strongest person and the strongest product with the best results. So because we were able to go down pathways that were really incorrect because we didn't have the education to keep us from going there, gave us the opportunity to know where and what would be the best, which would then beat everybody else, which is never our aspiration to have won the interior, the number one indoor product of the year. That wasn't the goal. The result was our product, or excuse me, our product was the goal. The result was the product of the year. But I think there's a unique edge, and we keep winning. Like, I mean, this is our seventh year Inc. 5000 this year, and you name it, we just keep getting these accolades. Fastest growing companies in the United States and Forbes top 200 small business. Like, these little things are never the goal. The goal is just to say, hey, how is it that we'd want to be, regardless of what the algorithm says? How are we supposed to treat people? How are we supposed to build products? What is our customers supposed to feel? Since we don't have the data, we do now with 12, 13 years of building doors, but we didn't have the data. We just did what we felt right with immediate feedback, and we're able to use that and move quickly. And I think sometimes you get a lot. I do a lot of these things for young entrepreneurs that want to start businesses. So they get caught in this I'm gonna. But the problem is they get into this I'm gonna thought process, and they're quick to talk themselves out of it because they have some type of background or overthought the process, rather than, hey, you have a brilliant idea, dude. What's keeping you from doing it? Well, I was running some analytics and I was running some math, and it's still questionable because XYZ proved that it didn't work. Well, okay, then why are you doing something that's already been proven didn't work? Number one. Number two, just because they didn't let it work doesn't necessarily mean that you can't let it work. NASA tried forever to launch something and get it, to get a good space system going. Elon proved that everything they were doing was wrong. And love or hate him, at least he went against the grain, right? That's the point. So I feel the same way about work. And that's why I'm very careful about I know this sounds terrible, about bringing graduates into our environment, simply because I don't want walls around our creative process, around our customer process, around the way we do things right now. And I'm not saying I won't do better if I do in the future, but currently in our current growth, we're outpacing. Our growth rate is much greater than a lot of people in downturn markets, especially in home improvement right now. So I'm nervous if all the rest of these Fortune 500s in our environment have those type of graduates, to bring those guys in my party. I don't want them to think different. Does that make
You know
sense?
what? Oh, it makes a lot of sense. Jeremy, there is no way in the world I can genuinely wrap this up in 18 minutes from now, because there's a
Go,
lot of
just
stuff
roll.
you've said. So I'm gonna ask you when we get to the top of the hour as to how much time you have, because you like talking as much as I do, which means I'm gonna have to ask you a lot of things, because everything you
Let's just
say here
roll it.
is interesting to me. So I'm
I'm
gonna
good.
pause here for a moment, right?
Sure.
And I want to talk not just to you, to my audience as well. I am, as you could probably may not be able to tell, but maybe my accent gives it away too. I'm an immigrant. I came here maybe when I was 21, something like that, right? I was really young when I came here from India. I'd gone to college back in India, and then I came here. I went to college again, right? I did my third master's degree here. So hearing you say all of these things, and something I genuinely agree with, standing on the other side of the college spectrum means a lot to me, and it will mean a lot to our audience as well. And I'm going to repeat some of what you said, but just say it in my own words. And maybe some of this story might help you digest why I'm saying this. Growing up in the part of the world I grew up in, and even living in the part of the world I live in, like in Northern Virginia, right? I don't know if anybody even thinks, like during high school years, from the people I know or the friends I'm there in the neighborhood, what they want to do after college, after high school. Going to college seems to have become a normal, natural thing, which is what it was back in India where I grew up. And it was very refreshing to me when I came here to the US, Jeremy, that people did not actually, one, take anything for granted, and two, each one made their own decision as to whether or not they want to go to college and what they want to study. And I thought that was very interesting to me. And I was jealous on one side and unsure on the other, because I didn't even know that there was such an option. Because growing up, I was not given that option. I didn't know anybody else was given that option. And what happened was, before you knew what you wanted to do, you enrolled in college and did engineering or law or one of these professional degrees. And then people never discovered themselves. They just, you pick up a job, you move to another country, you again do something else, you get a good job, you get paid, and you get married, have a child, life moves on. You're living the circle of life over and over and over again, without pausing for a moment, asking yourself, do I really want to do this? Is this why I think I was born to do, right? Hearing your stories, I cannot explain this in words. I probably won't do justice to it, but I think it's very refreshing, because you're like, you know what, let me, you've stressed you've banked more on vocational skills, correct? Let me do this. If you don't do it right, let's learn, let's fix, let's keep chugging along, right? That makes a whole lot of sense to me. And while I have a different question, I want to capture this quickly and ask you something about what we've not spoken thus far. I've asked a lot of people when we had these conversations around AI, Jeremy, a lot of the founders are running these companies, and as we add AI to the mix of things at Snowpal, whether they who had gone to college would actually go to college if they had graduated yesterday. Now, since you didn't do it earlier and you're a very successful person, I'm going to have to change the question a little bit.
Sure.
You believe that vocational skills, being practical or pragmatic and doing what makes sense and learning on the job and being dynamic about it, you've proven, like literally, you're a living example of what that means, right? To be successful. If you brought AI into the mix of things, how does your answer change? Like, I'm sure maybe it doesn't change to saying no, because even people who really truly believe you have to go to college have ceased to believe that anymore, because who wants to spend 4 years in college when you can actually use a lot of these tools and get stuff done? But
Sure.
if I were to ask you the same question, given your learnings and your background, what might you say? In other words, somebody is graduating from high school yesterday, right, in the US. College costs $60,000, $100,000, a lot of money, right? You've got to borrow a lot of money, and people take 20 years to pay off their loans. Given AI in the mix of things, that a lot of these skills are not needed anymore because the AI is doing all of those things. What is your take on college, and how different is it from your take as it was when you decided to go or not go there?
I think there's some really important jobs that do require college. Like, I don't want a doctor that just learned on YouTube, or a surgeon, for example.
Certification. In other words,
Right.
sorry, I
Those
should
are
have
kind of
qualified that,
different.
right? Good point. Good point. Chug
But
along.
let's
Yep.
let's say engineering, software engineering, whitetail. I can only use another pragmatic example, and here's what. Number one, we hired at the same time. This happened a couple of years ago. We had a job opening for the factory and a job opening for an IT rep, like a new UX UI developer in our office for Murphy Door. They were starting, and I know this seems low, but we're also in Utah, so keep that in mind. Weber County, we have a college right here, as well as BYU, University of Utah. So we're surrounded by a lot of students, and so the developer pay on a junior or a beginning developer that's not quite out of school is pretty low. So we posted that at $19 an hour. The shop was $19 an hour, right? So you're just kind of learning, an understudy per se. I had 3 applications for the factory and 334 for the IT guy at $19. So this
Oh
is a
my
few
no,
years
Jeremy,
ago.
sorry. This is incredible statistic there. Incredible statistic there. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause for a moment.
No, please, yeah.
Which year was this?
So that would be 22. So right at the tail of COVID.
Yeah, but then this is not like 15 years ago, right? This is
No,
like
no, no,
3
no.
years
Yeah.
ago, right? 3 years ago.
Mhm.
Just when but 22 is a very interesting point. Would you say that let me say this, right? It's a very interesting statistic. I want to dig deeper into it. This was just before AI became prominent, right? It was there. It's been around for a while, but it has
Sure.
become a lot more prominent. But this was, let's say, at the beginning of that, you posted an ad for $19 an hour for somebody to help you with the UI and UX on the website, right? Murphy Does, for instance, and the factory job. You said you got, was it like 100 times more the number of applications?
100 times, more than 100 times, 110 times more
Oh my
applications
goodness.
for
Oh my.
CIT. So then immediately, this is the way I use my pragmatic brain. I said, oh, I need to raise the value of the people I'm paying in the factory and lower the rate for the people in the coming in for IT. I can't even
Jeremy,
go
what
through
did
all
I
these.
do in college for 8 years? You're killing me there, my friend. No, I'm
Right.
kidding.
Well, I
Keep
mean,
going.
there's some, believe me, my devs make some real money. There's some guys in here
Right.
that are still doing well. Hopefully not for long. I love you guys. Just kidding. But no, I'm just teasing. I mean, it is what it is, but they understand it, and we love their team. They'll find another place inside Murphy Door if something is to override them. That's for sure. So, we've been able to do a lot with AI and so forth. But if I was going to say, what do I encourage my kids? Well, my son wants to be a mechanical and design engineer. And yes, my uncle, he was the VP of Lockheed Martin's presidential helicopter division. So he was way up there overseeing the presidential helicopter sector, right? We went fishing in Alaska in July of this last summer, and he asked my son, he's like, why in the heck are you going to college? He's like, well, I want to do kind of what you're doing, Uncle Dave. Like, why wouldn't you? He goes, are you kidding me? He goes, you work for your dad. He's got freaking robots. He's got automation. He's got this. You guys are sitting on how many different companies and doing 9 figures with that. You know what I mean? Like, what in the world are you doing going to school? He goes, well, I just want to learn these mechanics. He says, dude, you do better learning it at work from your dad with patience. And I love the fact that he started something. He said he'll never quit until he finishes it. Like, that's his job. He's going to do it till he's done, and then he won't quit, which I appreciate. Kind of something I pounded in his head. Now, my daughter, on the other hand, has a different lens. She's like, Dad, I want to be your EA, my executive assistant, so I can see how you run business. And I want to see how that is operating. I don't know a better way than to shadow you. She's about to graduate. She's at the point now, and her friends are at the point, they're like, I don't know if I want to do college. Like, what is there a career that I really want? And I use this example. She thought about law, maybe she'd be a great attorney. She argues well because she's a daughter, right? That's she'd be great at it. But I used Craig. I'm going to say Craig, my attorney at a big firm here in Salt Lake. He's been my attorney for the last 10 years plus. He makes a great living, right? They make good money, but he's the golden handcuff recipient, right? So he's like, Jeremy, you've done, he makes a great living. In the meantime, he goes, I watch you go and acquire assets and buy businesses and trademark and go through. He goes, dude, you sit here with $100 and some odd million in equities in different places, literally broke in 2016. And I've watched you propel, and I'm stuck at this annual living and annual earning. And I goes, but I'm so nervous to take the step. Well, I'm like, well, it's because you're making 400 grand. You're some of the smartest people we know. Doctors and attorneys are the kingpins of these golden handcuffs. They're really, really smart, and they're stuck. The weird spot is I went to, as a paramedic, I go to the hospital all the time. Now, as a paramedic, we were taking home, like I said, $762 every 2 weeks. Show up at the hospital, doctors always talk down at you. They're making 350, 400 grand a year, sitting in the ER. You show up as a paramedic, you're making 50. They're like, little you, big me. Great. And I appreciate their perspective. However, I broke I can't remember, I broke a bone. I went into the hospital, and one of the doctors came up and he's like, holy crap, it's you. And I said, what? He goes, dude, I see you everywhere. I can't believe what you've done. I'm so jealous. I look at you as a paramedic, and then you were coming in here hauling patients 24 hours a day. I'm stuck here. He goes, and I have all these businesses. Can we have a meeting? I said, I'd love to visit with you. He pitched a whole bunch of ideas that he thought in the medical world. Still to this day, he's an ER guy. This is a couple of years ago. And I'm like, man, just quit. I'm gonna. Like, just do it. He's like, well, man, I'm so comfortable. I got these great paychecks and this great insurance and these things that I'm going to have. Like, what if I have nothing? I'm like, and so what? And so what if you have nothing? Who cares? Like, I lived in my car. You know what? People are like, oh, you lived in your car. That's awful. How embarrassing. I'm like, well, I had a heater, and I had air conditioning, and I had a roof, and my windows went up power. Your house doesn't even have power windows, bro. Like, and I had a soft place to sleep. Like, I was never afraid of anything. I was warm. Like, so what is the worst? Well, the worst could be that, right?
Sorry, Jeremy. I want to interrupt you there, right? Because this is a great example, right? Great example, because this is exactly what I was trying to tell you earlier. You go to college, you get this job, it just pays you enough to be happy and bury your dreams for indefinitely. So
That's a good way to put that.
it takes a certain metal and a mindset to have you get out of that hole, essentially, right? And I want to say money is probably not the motivating factor. I mean, would you agree, or are you, for you to
If
keep going?
if money was a motivating factor, you'll last a year, because you can't drive the first year you've done this. It's always less than you thought. It's taking twice as long, costing twice as much, and you have no net income at the end
And
of the year.
hard, it's
And
incredibly
maybe the
hard,
second
right?
year. And so if you're going for money, you're going to run out of gas. That does not fill your tank. So you better have passion. You better have something that you really feel like what your mission is greater than that, because that one is always less than you hoped for longer than you hoped.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you there, Jeremy. Okay, that's a great point, right? But help us understand that better.
Okay.
Money cannot be the motivating factor. I'm glad you agreed, because having done this, I thought I would be my own boss and make a lot more money starting a company. And, I realized a year after going to a
You're more
job is a
poor.
whole lot easier, whole lot easier, right? That's it.
Yeah.
So each of us has our own passions. Now you tell me, uh, you mentioned being an entrepreneur was what's something that you liked and you genuinely enjoy, not necessarily doors per se. Maybe now you've fallen in love with doors because that's your business. But what was your motivating factor? If it is not money, and if doors were not what you were born to do, what were those one or two things that pushed you to say, Jeremy, you know what? Don't pick up a job. Don't go to college. Don't do your master's. Don't do your PhD. Try whatever it is that you're trying, even if you have to change what it is that you're trying, right? What are some of those things?
So the motivating factor stems, and I can tell you exactly the feeling. When I saw my shed door in another brand, in another state, and then when I went to Germany and saw it there, I thought, wait a second, this feels like it was just this feeling like I did something that the world appreciates. Now, I'm not making any money off of that, by the way. And I could give two craps. That reward of being able to travel and see it in different lawn and garden or home improvement stores around the world, going, oh my gosh, this, I remember the idea. Now, whether they got it from that, I have no idea, but I know that I did it and I know what I did and I see it all around. That was some feeling that I keep trying to replicate. And then with the door side, I have to say money has been phenomenal. We do great on the top line side. However, the experience that I'm able to deliver to the person when you walk through that door and you go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? This is so freaking cool. That reaction that we receive when people are walking into these hidden spaces or secret rooms is my fuel. So knowing, and then I'm like, I want to create something that not just the reason why you asked earlier, do I do it for my neighborhood or do I do it for bigger than the neighborhood? I've always reached for a bigger response than my neighborhood because I want to see when I travel some type of reaction bigger than my neighborhood. I want to just think that I could do something better for everyone. And ours may just be secret rooms and hidden doors, and that might be for the elaborate or the elite in some people's minds. But at the same time, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. When you see some of these things work and like, oh my gosh, I love that. I want that feeling that they're getting. And that's my fuel, is that smile, that little kid that's like, oh my gosh, my bat cave or my Barbie room or my, you know what I mean? And that's
No.
truly what feeds me. And the money is just the reward of great ideas. But it's still, even if this did not pay as well as it pays, I would still be doing it. And I promise you that. Now, I would
That's
find other
it.
businesses in parallel, but I would still do it.
That's an important point. And as obvious as it sounds to you, and it does to me as well, Jeremy, you might appreciate that that doesn't sound obvious to everybody. Certainly not to people who've not gone through the grind of running a company, right? Because I've had to explain to people who've genuinely asked these questions either directly or indirectly to me, to say, you know what, you could be doing something that's a lot easier, got a lot lesser risk, and maybe even making more money in the interim or the near term or whatever. Why in
Yes, I
the
will.
world would you be doing this? And I have, sometimes you can explain those emotions and feelings, right? But you get it if you get it. If you don't get it, more power to you, right? Let me
Right.
ask, as we chug along in this conversation, okay, so you decided to make these doors, you're going to target a certain market. Was the first door that you sold, right, in the current business that you do own, was that in a brick and mortar shop or was it online, the very
Dude,
first door?
you're going to love this being a software engineer because I freaking hokey pokey this WordPress website around with OpenCart to try to do the cash register. This thing was so fake and so visibly fake that I'm like, here's a bookcase we got off Pinterest and we're going to make it look like a door and maybe somebody will buy. And I remember when they sold the first one, like, are you kidding me? They just spent $3,500 on some CGI door because they believe and trusted me. I mean, you think about 2013, early 2013, buying that internet shopping experience is not the same as today. Like you're giving a guy a credit card in Utah for $3,500. You've never seen their store. You've never seen the actual product. You've never touched, feel, seen. You've never heard any reputation of the brand. And you're entrusting someone with paying in full for a product you have not ever had any of those interactions with ever. So we had to, I mean, you think about those early customers, bless their heart. And I thank you every day for any of my Murphy Door customers from 2013. Thank you. So at the end of the day, it was difficult, but it was like learning the whole time. And as we built more doors and we all of a sudden, went from one door a week to two doors and
No,
four
hang
doors.
on, Jeremy. Sorry. So maybe answer the question. I want to make sure I didn't
Oh,
miss it.
sorry, I missed it.
So no. So was it online from day one? Right. There's
Online
no
from
brick
day
and
one
mortar
and
store.
always the principal. Yeah, our main
Okay.
principal business is .com.
Okay. Here is where we start with the software component of our
Yeah, I love it.
conversation. Okay. Okay. You are not a soft. You were. I'm presuming you were not a software engineer. You had
Oh,
not built these applications or websites at that point of time, and you decided your business is selling doors. You have an idea how to make these doors, and You may even have an idea who you may want to sell it to. How did did you hire somebody to build, even I know it was 12 years ago, even to put together that, what was the platform that you used, if you remember that, or did you hire
Yeah,
somebody, or
WordPress.
you were like WordPress? Okay,
Yep,
so
we used WordPress, and I hired somebody. Yes, and they quoted 14,000 to build it, and it was 150,000. So it took all our money for a long time, and took a long, long time. So they
oh, hang on,
really.
hang on. So Jeremy, sorry, so this is important. They had quoted you $14,000, but it took 10 times more money to get it done, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second, because I had a Texas rancher call me, some time ago. Actually, a really nice guy. He found me on LinkedIn, for instance, and I'll share the story, right? And I don't mean to. I have to, I started sharing the story. I can't stop halfway now. He's a really good guy. I don't know him, right? He called me. He said, "Krish, I found you online. Look like a credible person. I need some help building something," right? And he told me a story of the amount of money he spent trying to build what he was starting to build, and
Mhm.
what the consulting company quoted him. As a Texas rancher, he was wealthy, but he was not in the business of building software, right? And he just trusted the people who pitched the offering to him. He said it cost him like 6 to 7 times more money, Jeremy. And he told me, Chris, the worst thing is they never gave me a working solution. The thing was broken all over the
Neither did
place,
mine.
right?
Same
So
story.
how did you maneuver? Like, what was your experience there? You started with $14,000. It cost 10 times more money. As a non-engineering founder, and I have a reason I'm asking you this question. I'll
Yep.
take it to current day and age. I promise you. What were some of your learning experiences there, and what are some things that you did wrong, Jeremy, that you could tell people who are watching this so they can do that more carefully?
So for me, I didn't understand it at all. I didn't know how websites build. It was some genie in a box scenario. So I had to find somebody that understood coding and understood kind of the website. I remember when they came at me the first time and said, "Okay, let's build a wireframe." I'm like, "All right, let me go get some wire. I'll be right back." Okay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know
Right.
what you mean. Like, okay, we're going to do a brain map. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I want to put a picture of this store, and I want people to pay me. That's what I want. So the whole sales aspect and how websites worked and all that crap is not anything I understood. So I believe in my company I hire, right? They say, okay, we can do this. And this is kind of the lipstick Figma. I don't know what it was then, but here's the drawing of what it could be. And I'm like, all right, that sounds great. Well, here we plug along. What's taking so long? Well, this configuration and this is taking longer and it's costing more. And we need pictures and we need this. I mean, the growth, how this ends up adding up. Well, we were selling doors. We started to sell doors. They got the initial launch and getting a couple, but as we populated and matured the website, it kept costing money to get to what they even had promised. Well, when we hit about that 140 or 150,000 mark, I'm like, dude, you're at 10x what you said we'd be when we were there. And they had all the reasons in the world. I'm also quick to move on. I'm like, okay, in the background, I went and found another. Let me back up. I believe I started looking at about $80,000 or $90,000. I said, I need to go find somebody else and build a Murphy 2.0 in the background that is saying that they could do it, because I did not see a end date. This felt like it was going to last forever, that I was just going to be paying this. I don't remember what I was paying, but 5,000 or 6,000 a month to go get this thing
So,
built,
Jeremy, I'm
which
going
was,
to interrupt you. I'm going to
yeah,
interrupt you as you go along. Hopefully, that doesn't hurt your train of thoughts. And if it does,
no, no,
my
no.
apologies. I'm going to ask you, this is very interesting, right? Because our audience is engineering and we've gotten to that part of the conversation. So I'm going to get as specific as I can. You can respond to it as specifically as you want to. If there are things
Okay.
that you don't want to share, you're more than welcome to not
No,
share with us here. Was this organization that you were working with at the time, were they located in the country or were they outside the United
No, they were
States?
Utah based. And so I could drive to their office. I could go visit with them and
Okay,
we could see
okay.
one-on-one face. Yeah, for sure.
So it's, in other words, they were, the reason I asked that is because there's challenges of hiring folks, companies outside the borders, and
Sure.
doing it remotely and whatnot. So this was not that. It was that. So what was,
Local.
were they actually just not experienced enough in doing it, that they had genuine intentions but they were poorly executing to those?
You nailed it. They're new. I believed in their new. I love startups. They had this vision and I think they underbid it by a mile. And so
But
when they started
okay.
to build it up, they ended up saying, hey, this is costing more. I'm sorry. I know it's hard to get mad, but I did see that they were also naive and new to this game. And I'm like, well, look, I got to have the bleeding stop at some point. So when I was about $70,000, $80,000 deep into them, I started looking for a secondary, more established web developer, and I think their bid came in at around 50 or 60,000, significantly higher than my first bid, but they'd already outspent that. But they were willing to put a guarantee to it, like not to exceed. but they'd have a
Correct.
full deliverable. So that was great. So I did parallel. So I did finish. I went with those guys. By the time they built 2.0, they were as far as they were going to let them go, which was about 140 or 150 grand. We pulled the plug. We immediately took 2.0 over and wiped out everything I'd spent that 140 or 150 grand on. That
Okay,
was a
so the good.
deadbeat.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of more things there. So this is also an important question for me and a lot of us, which is your business was selling doors, right? So having the website is a means for you to sell it. You have it's a
Correct.
cost center, right? It doesn't bring you. I mean, it kind of brings you money, but it's not directly a profit center per se because you're not making margins on the website, right? You're spending
Yep.
money, so it's a cost center, correct?
Correct.
Given that, how interested were you in that part of the business at all? Like for you, it was more like, hey, I need a place to be able to, so people can go online and buy. I don't care how it is or how it looks, or were you keenly interested in how it came about and how it was going to happen and all that stuff?
Both. And I know that's kind of a weird answer, but one, I don't care. Yes, because that wasn't my interest. And it was that transitional period of time when internet was becoming more relevant for sales. And less phone book, more of that, you know what I mean? And less
Right.
digital or more digital marketing, less magazine, newspaper, and commercials. So we were in that phase and I could see it, but I wasn't interested in necessarily the how, just the do. The other side is every penny I was spending on that digital format was looking at what I had to delay in spending for making my manufacturing facilities better and the experience. But I did also recognize that my client base was top 1%. I mean, we're building secret rooms, panic rooms, humidors,
Mhm.
speakeasies, right? So that isn't for the low income people. So I knew that my website had to feel qualified to take the money from high end individuals, right? It had to have a flawless experience in the aspect of the high end consumer.
Okay, very good. So how closely, let's say the team is building this, they're designing it. How closely did you work with them in getting this thing up and running? Like how much micromanagement, if any, did you do?
I couldn't. I tried, but I didn't know what they were talking about. They're talking about JavaScript and whatever. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're saying. And I would just get frustrated because, when you get in a room and they're talking about stuff you don't understand, it's easier just to be like, now I feel dumb. And so I'm just going to leave. I don't want to feel dumb. So just give me this. Here's what I want it to look like. Don't bore me with the details because I don't care. And I don't want to walk away from here feeling like I should have gone to school. So just give me this. Make it look like this. I don't need to see the back end. When I show up, just show me the front end. My UX, UI, I don't care about the back. So they'd always show
Okay.
me the back end. And I'm like, I don't care about it. I don't. I want to see what it looks like on my side and how it interacts with me and my clients.
And then as you work, did it ever give you concern, Jeremy, that you're building a business of selling doors, but you have to sell this online because you started the e-commerce, no brick and mortar store. This, and you said it's top 1% clientele because not everybody's purchasing these expensive doors. So the credibility of your site and the experience of the users coming onto your platform or the application to make these purchases, I'm sure was very important. So if you had concerns about the what do I say, the functionality that you provided through your site, or the stability or the durability and all kinds of, I'm not talking
Mhm.
scalability, but everything else but that. How did you tell yourself that, hey, I want to make sure that this thing is always up and running, that people go there, they don't see a 404 error or anything of that nature, right? As much as you did not understand software engineering necessarily, how did you make sure that they didn't end up in that situation?
I didn't know about it. So I didn't know that data. So back in the day, so you think about 2012, 2013, we're talking 12, 13 years ago, you were buying data blocks. Remember? You're like, hey,
Right.
we're going to be buying this much data. You're housing on something.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you run out of data, people can't access your site unless you refill that cup, right? It's not so much anymore. I don't know if it is, but we don't have that problem. Our cup's
Right.
full. But back in the day, I'd always run out. I'm like, my website's down. Like, yeah, you're out of tokens or whatever. I'm like, oh shit. Oh,
Right.
here's my credit card. Like, you fill it up. Why is it running out? And as we got more awareness and more people coming to the site, we kept running out and we had to kind of move that lid. So that's what kind of brought me to the awareness of failure. Like, okay, what does failure look like? Failure is they run out of money and you don't have usability. So you need to keep that full. Okay, why does this website crash? What's happening? And we had a couple of early experiences where we were launched on some DIY show or HGTV show. It was a DIY I Want That special. And they showed it. Well, it crashed our website. It spiked up, crashed down. There was too many users. It crashed. I'm like, okay, why did this crash? Well, you had this huge spike of visitors. It used all your tokens. One, two, it's not, the infrastructure isn't built to handle that type of traffic, like a bad bridge on a freeway. Like you just didn't have that built right. I'm like, great. Well, how are we going to make it so? Because right now, what you're seeing is not near what we're going to drive. I mean, right now, I think we drive almost 10 or 12 million people a year to the website, a billion social views. But I mean, the game is different, and it's things we've got to learn incrementally. And that I think
It's
uniquely,
amazing, right? We are taught iterative software development, right? Agile programming. I mean, this, that, and the other. There are some formal, fancy buzzwords that are associated with these ways of doing things well. You've done everything exactly how software should is actually expected to be done, except that you didn't know it was supposed to be done that way, right? It was just your instinct telling you, let me take iterative steps, right? Let me not spend a lot of cycles building this incredibly beautiful website and not sell a single door. I want to sell some doors along the way as I improve the quality of this website that I'm building.
100%. That's how you start something with nothing. Like literally had no money to start Murphy Door, none. And so when I got a $24,000 investment from my neighbor, and that money was spent on patents and research and trademark and that kind of stuff, and then one trade show that we had a door that I opened and closed for people. But that was the only investment money that we rolled. And then from there, it was growth, right? So I had to get my money came by pre-selling and 100% prepaid. So that's what gave us the fuel. So we were able to say, hey, this is what the prepay is. These are our margins. What can I commit to keep building my infrastructure? I mean, I didn't do a great job like people that have a bunch of money. They can build a solid groundwork and then put a beautiful footing in on their project and a nice foundation, build this superstructure. Like I basically had to let's put up some walls on this sand and then we'll come back and excavate it and put some footings underneath. And then after that, we'll put some foundation underneath it, put it up on some stilts for a little while we kind of build that infrastructure after. But we needed to make it look pretty, right? So that way people were willing to spend money, and then we'll build the structure, which
Okay.
is not necessarily the smartest way to do it, but
No,
it's a
I
way
think
you can do it.
I think it makes the most sense to me. I almost couldn't think of any other way that seems better to me. But let's say fast forward this 10 years, right? 10 years
Yep.
later, right now, so you started with selling online. You said there's no brick and mortar version. So the current website that we see, correct? That's
Yep.
is that how different? I mean, I know it's incredibly different from your first version, but if you could just speak to how it's changed most recently, right? What are some
Yeah.
things that it does today that, let's say, not even 10 years ago, or you can start there in the last couple of years? What are some changes? I have a reason I'm asking this question from an engineering standpoint, but I want to get your thoughts on what are some things that you've changed, and why did you make those changes to the way the website presents itself?
Sure. Mostly aesthetics, like making sure that it's appealing from the view by taking our largest consumer base, making sure the images that are shown are the ones that are popular at the time.
Can I
One, two.
share? Can I get to your
Yeah, please
website
go
right
ahead.
now?
Yeah,
That way,
please go ahead.
people are watching this. UI UX people can also benefit
Yeah,
from it,
please
right?
share it.
So
So one is the front interface, making sure that we're directly marketing to like and kind consumers, making sure we know our avatars well, making sure we know what hot products are moving based on analytics, showing those images the right way. One, two, our configuration is very basic. We have a whole new website that'll be launched I shouldn't say whole new website, a whole new experience that'll be launched during mid next week that changes the configuration systems completely and the ordering process of how to assemble a door. So that comes out Wednesday of next week. But that being said, the cool part of when you're building a door out, we've developed some software on the backside on the receiving side that what we call screen to machine. So then whatever you're ordering goes directly into our software that then sends it to our IntelliStore that orders the wood that
hang
you
on,
just
Jeremy.
processed.
Jeremy, you're getting to really interesting parts of what I'm gonna have to interrupt you there so we can
Sure.
go a little bit slower. So the first thing, right? Let's just do the easier part first. So
Okay.
a couple of things you mentioned what changed, right? The user interface, because you're catering to people who are buying $2,000 doors, right? So it means that experience needs to be good. So we can get into the details of the software as much as you want to, or as much as you're
Sure.
able to answer here, right? But can you give us an idea about how this is built? Like, are you using like Shopify or one
This
of
is a
those plat?
Shopify Pro. Yep. So it's
Okay,
liquid.
Shopify. Okay, I just made a guess there, but Shopify,
Yep.
for instance. So, um, how much do you like the experience? And I'm asking this because we are, while our podcast is predominantly engineering, we are also working on a fintech API, Jeremy, and so we've spent a lot of time recently on the stock
Okay.
market. So finance is something we also share with our audience. So some of these questions might be nothing door related, nothing engineering related,
That's
maybe
okay.
finance related. So, what do you like about Shopify as a platform?
In general, they 99 point whatever percent uptime. That's really the big thing. Their uptime's great. They're too expensive. They're too limited. I'd love to find a different pathway than Shopify. However, they do empower people to go from zero to where, hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions. That's great. However, it's super limited in the ability to show a proper configuration. I mean, for our end goal, right? So this system will not work for where we're headed. However, it's been a great system to take us from that 5 million range on up to where we're at.
Okay, makes sense. When you talked about differentiation, you talked about, selling it to high-end customers. As software engineers, I'm not going to stop sharing because I want to ask a couple of questions
Sure.
specific to some of what I'm seeing there. So as software engineers, Jeremy, we make a lot of mistakes, right? Some because we've made those mistakes repeatedly and we don't even recognize that those are actual mistakes till, a revelation hits us or something at some point. But there are others that we just don't know, right? The known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, so to speak. And here is what I specifically mean by that. When you build a feature or when you're given 5 features, we almost always, a lot of times, treat every feature as equally important, right? And we are over engineering the solution. That's something I've seen myself do over the years. I've seen other developers do as well. I'll give you a very specific example here. You have a product that you're selling it to a certain clientele, top 1% and whatnot, and you want it for the website to look as cool as it can. Yet you're not going to kill yourself trying to make it incredibly different, right? Because what I mean by that is when I go here, it's got a very seamless experience. But with that being said, it does look like other sites too, right? It's got a
100%.
photo, it's got some details, right? So here is my question. In your experience of working with engineers, have you seen a scenario where you're telling them something and they're like trying to build something else because they don't understand where the importance of what needs to be done is?
Every time.
Okay, I'm sad to hear that, but do you want to share an experience or two because it'll help us a lot?
Sure. So here's a simple one. And I think some of it has to do with the framework of Shopify, but you can go to this product. What I would love to see is here's the product. Then it comes up with my goal. So let me start with my goal in my business and kind of what it is. So with Murphy Door, the reason I love this project so much is every single thing we build is singular, meaning it's one piece manufacturing flow. So every door we make is unique to that client. Beds are a little bit different because you're limited by queen, king, twin or whatever, but the doors are really unlimited. So we have 300 roughly million configurations you could go through. So that makes it really difficult on the manufacturing side. But this is how my pragmatic brain works. Customers want what they want, when they want it, where they want it. Right. So this is Amazon Prime. I want this, I want it tomorrow, and I want it on my front porch. Right. So we've lost, you think about TikTok, Instagram, and all these things, we get instant dopamine satisfaction. People shop. Speed beats free. This is an Alex Hormozy saying, but speed beats free 100% of the time. Right. So that means that you think about, he uses the example of going to the gym. You can go to the gym for $10 a month and lose weight, or you can pay a surgeon $100,000 and have it tomorrow. Right. And you can have the results for big money, and they're in business and they have lots of business. So my thought of Murphy Door is I want my clients to have what they want, when they want it, where they want it, when they want it. So that's my long-term goal. My 2030 mission is that somebody can order a Murphy Door and have it leave our factory in 3 days, completely customized to their liking. Now, the friction that we have is we don't have an installer network, and we don't have a really understandable product to make it feel like they have the confidence to say, that is exactly what I want, and I want it Wednesday, right? So, that is something we can't deliver. So my optimum goal would be here's a door. Take your phone, for example, and say, hey, I want an augmented reality experience. I want to drag this wood type over and color the door that wood type. I want to stain it that. I want those knobs. I want this glass. I want it this wide. I want it this tall, and I want it this deep, where they can then take the product, spin it around, and have a full configuration based on unlimited SKU capacity. Right. So that is really difficult. I think it's going to be much easier as we come further down the AI platforms, and it's working much different. But at the same time, I've tried to ask for a simpler order process that can give a quasi feeling of that. So here's your width. Okay, make the door do that. Here's your height. Make the door do that. Here's the wood type. Make it do that. And only showing a few bubbles at a time. Right now, it looks like a contractor ordered database. It looks like it's built for contractors. I need it to be built for high-end women that want to be able to shop for something like they do a purse and be so confident in what they're visually seeing and the buttons that they've clicked. Just, I mean, for me, you just need to click a button and it should resolve our answers. But I can't get my programmers to understand, like, quit doing all this this jargon that these ladies don't understand, or they won't have the confidence to hit purchase. If you would just say, hey, here's the width, here's the depth, like, do this. And if they could take their eye measure, take that data and input, and then do that. I mean, to me, it seems fairly simple, but even
You
if
know,
they did
Jeremy.
basic configuration would work.
Sorry, Jeremy. What
You're
you're
fine.
saying there is golden, because if you asked a developer or a UI UX designer to go say to Murphy Door and just make an improvement, I mean, they're going to make an honest attempt at making an improvement, not knowing, having a clue about what the customer really wants. Right? I work for large companies, mid-sized companies. I work for startups for a long time before creating our own startup here.
Mhm.
What you're talking about here, Jeremy, is like incredibly important. So I want to pause for a moment so people are able to digest this. See, what happens in a lot of the organizations, I mean, things are changing, but it takes a long time for things to be perfected. And when you perfect one thing, the technology stack changes, the team changes, everything else. It's like a poker table, right? I play poker, and after 6 hours of figuring out all the players on the table, you
New
feel like
new
you have a
player.
good yeah, and a new player comes about, right? And everything goes out the door, right? It changes the whole dynamics. So if you ask the UI UX designer, go make an improvement, they're going to come up with a lot of suggestions that may not make any sense to you as a business owner. You'll be like, you know what, this makes no sense because my customers don't care for this, right? So it has to sort of come from the horse's mouth. But also, as developers or UI or UX designers, folks who are part of the engineering team, depending on the size of the organization, Jeremy, you might appreciate this, we don't have insights into what the customer's mind is, right? They're not hopping on a podcast and being gracious enough like you are, explaining why you need something and why you don't want something. So do you see this gap even today? And if so, do you see AI play a role in bridging this gap? I'm not talking about AI in terms of augmented reality. We'll come to that in a second. Your customers seeing exactly how the door is going to look like in their living room and then having a conversation with you. I'm more talking about, uh, you know, bridging the gap between the requirements of the customer and the team that's digesting this, so they can build products and solutions better, so there is no
Yeah.
$14,000 expectation, $150,000 spent.
Yeah. So that's pure brand.
Okay, tell me more.
All right. So the software we created is really basic. So to your point, like you say, it's reviews, and that's the high level purpose of pure brand. So this is what we've done is we've empowered all our past customers to talk and have conversation, a Zoom style meeting with future customers. So let's say you're shopping for a Murphy door. If you got to the bottom of the page, it said talk to an actual customer. You'd click on that button, you'd enter your phone number and your email address, and it has the product that you're looking for. And it'd say, I want a meeting now, or I want it tomorrow, or I want it next week, or whatever. Like, think of an Uber ride. When you say I want it now, it sends a text message out to everybody that has that product that's opted in to be a host, and it says, hey, there's a guest wanting to talk to you about that product. Are you willing to do it? We pay those guests $50 to take the call for Murphy Door. You don't have to. You can do store credit. You can do whatever. Now, that we'll pay them $50. We never give them a script. We don't tell them what to say. We don't do anything. Have you bought a Murphy Door? Did you pay for it? Yes. Okay. You can now be a host if you'd like. Whether you hate me or you hate Murphy Door or you love it, you can talk openly, no questions asked. Like, you share your story. Now, we do some background on the host, making sure they're not in a crazy looking house, or they have
Right,
some,
yeah.
right there is some background preliminary approvals, but we want them to talk openly. I call it a 360 review. So what they'll do is they'll say, hey, how you doing, Krish? I see you have a Murphy door. Tell me about it. Well, my delivery
Hey,
sucked. They
Jeremy,
delivered it.
sorry. Can you just go back to the flow again, the workflow as to what exactly happens? I'm going to Murphy Does, right? Or I'm going to this new product. What is the initial experience look like? What am I doing, and where does this come in? Where does the host
So
come into play?
before it said International Builder Show at the top of the Murphy Door site, it would say talk to an actual customer. A couple banners down, it says have questions, talk to an actual customer, be educated, not sold.
Okay.
Right. So you're not talking to a salesman at all. You're just actually getting the true experience from an actual consumer that actually spent money. They can't be influencers that we've given products. They do not qualify to be on the program. They had to have spent the actual dollars. No incentives included in their purchase, right? To be able to qualify for that. So that's the filter. Second is so you will see it on every product that says have more questions, call a customer service or concierge, or talk to an actual customer to ask more about the actual product from an actual customer. And you can have that meeting now. So that's kind of the workflow. And from that point, you'd be directed and they'd send a
And then is
randomized
that customer is one, are they available in real time, or
in
do you have
real
to set up
time.
a in
Real
real
time, because
time?
we have hundreds and hundreds of customers out there, thousands of customers. We've got 150,000 products. Not all are opted in to be hosts, but they'll get a text message to products with like in kind, or customers that have like in kind product that you're interested in. So
Incredible.
literally,
So and then they get the request, and then let's say they accept the request. What happens after that?
they hit the button and it goes live and the camera's on, and we ask them to be by their Murphy door so they can at least share it, right? So that's all we ask is like, be by the product at least, because the customer's going to want to see and going to ask you questions. So that's it. And then from there, they have a conversation. We ask for 15 minutes. A lot of our hosts are generous enough to go longer, but most of the time it happens in that 15-minute window. They'll ask, hey, so how was your experience with Murphy door? Well, the delivery was rough. They delivered it to the curbside, and then I had to get it in the house, and it weighs 300 pounds, and that was difficult, and whatever. Like, we had a customer issue, or it was wonderful, and the door's great, but I had a problem over here. Okay, tell me more about the door. Okay, so you didn't understand the delivery process. They can really drive down rather than get a 1-star delivery, 1-star for a bad delivery. They can find out, well, how's the actual product though? Right. And that's
So
kind of,
Jeremy, so Jeremy,
go
this
ahead.
is amazing. So is the idea here that you're not going to buy a door because Brad Pitt came on TV and said this door is good? You're not buying a door because an influencer. I'll get to that in a
No,
second from an influencer
because your neighbor
standpoint,
said it's good.
right? So here you're saying hear it from the horse's mouth, right? People who actually bought these doors. So that's amazing. So does that change the whole way you look at advertising? Like this becomes
Yeah.
a
So
how does
check this out. So this is where I'm going with a little bit of the UX, UI, and AI. So we take this, it's video recorded, right? And they're having these full on conversations. So it says, okay, the delivery was rough. Great. How was the door? Well, my door is great, but my cabinet hinge is squeaky, or this is lost color. Great. Okay. Well, then the consumer's like, well, I couldn't find this on the website. I didn't know how this worked. When I don't understand what this button means, this isn't clear. There wasn't enough information of this. Sorry, I had to do a meeting with you because I had a question about this button, or I couldn't find a certain product on their website. Could you walk me through that? So now I have a salesman, and I have a customer service agent, and I have, from the actual user experience as it is occurring, being recorded. So we got video scrub. Then we have full
transcripts? Yeah.
transcriptions of it. Then I pull that transcription and I take pros and cons from the past customer, and I take pros and cons from the future customer. And then we trigger occurrences. And it says, hey, how many times has this product had a problem with the cabinet hinge? Squeaky. Oh, this is the 4th occurrence on that cabinet hinge. Okay, perfect. That gets an email sent to the R&D department that says, hey, cabinet hinge on this product is having problems. At the same time, it's going to get an email to the customer service department that says, hey, customer service, Krish has a issue with his cabinet door hinge. Send him a new one. All automatic. And then on top of that, the pro and con from the future customer is they couldn't find this on the website. Cool. It triggers a thing to the UX department that says, hey, make this more visible, make this more understanding, see what we can do for this, because they couldn't figure out this, give more information, give more video, whatever. So this gives us this unique opportunity to take action as it's being said from our future customers and our past customers. Even cooler, however, is now if you're a host that's getting paid, you use the Pure Brand app to download on your phone. Just like Venmo, we sweep your contacts over, right? If they allow it, like if the client allows that to
Right.
happen. And then what happens is when those customers, potentially those contacts, come to our website, we can then marry them with their friend or their contact and say, hey, by the way, I noticed that you're wanting a meeting. Would you rather talk to Krish because he's your friend, he's a contact of yours, or do you just want a random person to talk to you? You can do either one. And we won't say your name. We'll just say we have a contact of yours that's also a host. Would you want to talk to one of your contacts, or would you want to talk to some random?
Yeah,
So now we
Jeremy,
have friends selling
you
friends.
you I don't know how to react. You've blown me away, right? I'm going to say after the call, I'm going to have a chat with you about a couple other things, but this is incredibly amazing, right? Let me ask you two or three things based on what you've said there. The first thing is, you should be at Harvard and doing a visiting professor like Jeremy Barker and teaching
Yeah.
people. Because if I were in college, this is the kind of people I would have wanted to genuinely also learn from. Right? People have not just read books after books, which are great, right? I'm not saying it's not good to read books,
I
but
read all every day.
right, but somebody who's gone through the pain of doing it, right? So hats off to you, Jeremy. It's just amazing, right? Amazing. But now to my more specific question, which is, where do these requirements come from? Are they coming from your mind particularly, or are you like, what, doing some research, sending out questions and surveys to your
Yeah, no,
customers
I
and
don't do.
figuring
I've
out?
never done that. I've never done that. So I listen, like I read reviews. So that the whole idea, first and foremost, I'm going to say this out loud. You said Yelp earlier. Yelp is the worst platform on the planet, period. And I mean, think about the name. The name is like what a dog does when you kick it. So that's Yelp, right? So it's like the Yelp environment is so fictitious. They charge you for all your true reviews. Like they'll fill you up full of garbage reviews. And then if you want good reviews to be released, you have to sign up for their pro platform. And then they subdue or they hold back a lot of your good reviews. And they say they use their AI to detect coerced or convinced reviews. So it's crazy. You get on I'll give you an example. We're 4.97 stars on Google. We're 2.5 on Yelp. We have 500 Google reviews plus on just the business alone, let alone products. On Yelp, there's 30. So it's like, look, then we got digging and like, oh no, you have a whole bunch of 5 stars, but we release these based on your participation
Wow.
level, which is horseshit. I mean, pardon the French, but it's like,
Right.
hold on a second. If it's a review platform, this should be full allowance without
Right.
coercion,
Yeah.
without having to pay to play. Like, this is not what I want. So I got a 1-star review from a customer on Yelp that said they loved their door. The pallet was broken. They couldn't believe we shipped a door on a broken pallet. First and foremost, we don't buy broken pallets. It transfers 3 docks on the way to your house. Pallets break. The door's fine. They said they loved their door in the review. So I contacted, I think it was a Yelp review. I'm like, look, this is garbage. They said they loved the door, not the pallet. I'm not the Estes. I'm not the freight company. Like, this is not a good review.
Right.
It's to me, they wouldn't do anything. I'm like, well, how do we get a review? Google, much the same. I'm not beating them up as much because you don't pay to play. You can't really pay to play on the review platform. I mean, other than advertise, but ultimately saying, I'm like, how do we get organic, truthful reviews that's more than I'm angry, I'm going to type a 1-star, or I'm thrilled, I'm going to type a 5-star. In my heart, I don't believe I don't believe in a 1-star unless you stole my money,
Right.
a 5-star unless you mowed my freaking lawn. Right? Because it's like, if you pay $1,000 for $1,000 thing, you got what you expected, and that should be a 3-star. Like, I mean, I paid $1,000. I got $1,000 thing. It's like, I gave you $1,000. You gave me 1,000 back. Do you need a 5-star review? I don't think so. I mean, I think ultimately it was just an expected transaction, and 3 stars shouldn't be punitive. It
And
should be like,
Jeremy, for an established business, this is an inconvenience. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but for emerging businesses, really small or trying to just come
it'll
about,
bankrupt you.
oh my God, yeah.
They will. So they say an average 1-star costs a company 100 grand. If you think about it. So that's why I think when they do these haphazard deals, you got Yelp in control, Google in control, Meta in control. It's like, look, they don't realize that a 1-star could be the death. If they only have 2 reviews and they have a 1-star and a 2-star or a 3-star, they just started, they don't quite know. They may never get off the ground because of your punitive way of doing reviews, right? It's not
Jeremy, I
fair.
want to share something with you. When we launched our mobile app, a native mobile app, about like 4 years ago, we support different forms of login and all kinds of stuff. I had a review on not the App Store. The App Store reviews were more reasonable than the Play Store for whatever reason. This is in some part of Southeast Asia or South Asia. I don't know. Somebody said, I can't log in. I don't see the login button. And then they gave 1 star, right? I remember writing to Google at the time. I'm like, this button is there on the first. You download the app, you see the stupid button. It just says login
It's right
or
there.
yeah, it's right there. And then you're like, oh my God, yeah, you sometimes end up being at the mercy of people. I don't know why, whether people mean it or people are trolling. I have no idea. So what do you
Oh,
suggest, Jeremy, that we What do businesses have to do? Is there something, anything at all that they can potentially do for these types of
So
things?
this is where I thought of purebrand.io. Like I'm like, okay, how do we empower businesses to, let's say you're mad about your button not being there. Wouldn't that be great if now he figured it out? He left the 1 star. If you go back and refute it, or you'll balance to a 3 star, like fix to 5 equals 3, right? Like that's not too fair. Like maybe he didn't get the full download. Maybe he had a phone glitch, a connection glitch, like a Wi-Fi or an internet glitch that made it so he didn't get the full download. So that's what hurt you. Maybe there wasn't a login button. Maybe he lost connection, but you took the freaking 1 star for it.
Right.
But well, let's say most people don't leave 5 stars. Well, we've dealt, think about that, 150,000 doors. I got 500 Google reviews. That's ridiculous. But at the same time, what if most people don't go and say they got what they expected. They don't leave reviews for that. So my thought in Pure Brand was like, if I can ask people to give the 360 review without coercion and paying money other than the $50 for your time, I'm not paying you for what you say.
Right.
You say whatever you want. And there's reasons. One, I need the learnings. I need the negative feedback so I can make product improvement and customer service improvement. So now every client, to give you an example, we had a terrible customer service run. A lot of like, can't get a hold of them, 4-hour wait, 24 hours to get back to us. So we created a concierge department. So now when you buy a Murphy door, you get issued a concierge that very day. You get assigned a person that's your person all the way through forever. Like your person is this guy. You need a door, you need a repair, you need anything. Here it is. They get a thank you box. They get this whole thing. Now, if you read, it's like, I never had customer service like that. You actually get a concierge off a web order. You get called within 24 hours. Like all this came from feedback with Pure Brand. And it's like, if I didn't have the opportunity to let my customers share their experience, and then the future customers share what their expectations are, and aggregate that into some type of data, that we could make improvements on the experience on the website, the product improvements, and then the overall customer service or lifelong, what do we want to say, raving fans. The only way to do that is to take data. No one can get it from either a 1 star or a 5 star review. It's not fluid. It's not 15 minutes. I can get emotion. I can get sentiment. I can get all that tactile response that then feeds into a business that's more aggregated and more dynamic and more, I guess, personal to every single person. We try our best. I mean, we're not going to be perfect, but we try our best to make this experience be as flawless as possible so they can get what they feel like was worth the value, right? Some of our doors, you can get $100,000 deep, easy, right? I think, I'm not going to say his name, but you probably saw some of his posts recently of his big art studio. That was a $360,000 project. So, I mean, it's like they can spend some real money. We have doors at 1,000, and you want to spend $500,000, you can do that. But that they need to be cheerleaders. Like all the posts that gentleman's been doing, we haven't paid for that. He's been just a true raving fan, right? And this, you know who he is, right? You've seen him for
Yeah.
16 years on TV buying businesses, right? I mean, I don't want to go too deep, but you know
Right.
exactly who the guy is. So I'm not paid for that promotion. He literally says, I'm not an investor in this product. I truly love this company and their people. Like that is a huge
So
thing.
Jeremy, that's a great example. Which means, you mentioned cheerleaders. Let's talk about that for a second. So as a business, that's an important thing, right? It's not people you're paying to review or to advertise and
Right.
whatnot. It's people who genuinely enjoy it's almost like Apple, right? Apple's got millions of cheerleaders around the globe where people are spending, thousands of dollars on phones that haven't changed a whole lot over the years, essentially. So
And
as a
we still have
business,
them, right?
yeah, as a business, do you do something explicitly, like consciously, to look for those cheerleaders, or does it happen organically?
They have to happen organically, right? They have to. If you don't treat every client as your potential cheerleader, you'll never have the one. So if your experiences aren't generic in the sense that every single customer gets that same type of opportunity for experience, I'm not saying they all do. Is there a customer that slips through the cracks and doesn't get a concierge? Yeah, that happens. I mean, you're selling a door every few minutes.
No, but the
Somehow
intent is there, right? You're saying the
the
intent
intent's
is to
there.
treat everybody exactly the same. So
Everybody the same, so you get the same results. Like if I can create stark raving fans to make it so they're sharing their story on Instagram, sharing their story on Facebook, sharing their story on TikTok, sharing their story on Google, being willing to be a host on Pure Brand. Like think about that. We've got a marketing agency that's doing these views, even if they get 10 views or 10,000 views or a million views. Fortunately, there's been some that have, like customers that have got 40 million views with our name tagged. Like those are, what would that cost you to get that with average watch time of like 53 seconds? That's more than a Super Bowl ad with just as many, you know what I mean? You're not
Yeah.
going to be able to pay for that. So my goal is to have one, a customer service or customer experience that's better than they expect. And it's pretty easy to shock people with customer service right now. One, I'm not against, by the way, Pure Brand, a huge staff overseas. So India programming, right? So I'm not against anything, but customer service in America right now, it's rare to have very fluent English speaking customer service. Well, we have a few of those, but guess who ends up being the majority? Our customers, because of Pure Brand. Now they're talking to their neighbor and they're asking good, heartfelt questions that they're not defending on. Now, think about the other piece. We can take that full transcription from that client, send it through AI, figure out their voice sentiment, figure out their concerns and questions, and generate through AI a sales transcript that fits that client on how to respond for their biggest concerns at the tone they
You know
want
what,
to be
Jeremy?
responded with.
You keep telling me you didn't go to college, you didn't do software engineering, you didn't write code, you didn't do UI design, but all of your answers tells me like you've done this like a million times, right? Literally, because you're speaking more specifically than a lot of the developers that I've I know personally. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'll be honest with you, right? Which is very which is a blessing. Clearly, you're a smart person, but outside of that, the commitment to what you're doing here makes a difference. So let me ask you, you mentioned AI a couple of times. Surely you can't have any conversation these days, right? You can have a simple dinner on a Friday night without talking about AI, anxiety and concerns and yada yada yada.
Sure.
A number you already mentioned a lot of things that AI is able to bring to the table. You mentioned the transcription and you mentioned sentiments, right? Or you mentioned the voice, the audio, the video, maybe expressions and whatnot. So are there things that you're seeing that you could not have actually done if not for AI, and are there other things that you could still do with or without AI in the next set of things that you're looking? Let me rephrase my question. What I'm trying to ask is, if you're doing 10 new things in the next 6 months to a year, how many of those things hinge and have a core direct dependency on AI
A lot
versus
of them.
one?
A
A
lot
lot
of
of
them.
them do.
Yeah,
Okay.
so a lot of them, we right now we're looking really heavily for a really good AI dev, right? We want one internal to come in and work for us to keep us on the cutting edge as best as possible where applicable. Now, you ask what could be done without AI? All of it. But talk about human capital to be able to watch the video and then have enough emotion or sociological or psychological understanding of where people are to help with it. But you're talking about highly educated people that are going to sit behind a screen, listen, and watch to do that. And it probably won't be as good and clean, but it could all be done. It's just, do you have the resources to do
Yeah,
it?
the scale of which, and some of it maybe even cannot even be done because the tool probably not only does it faster, it actually makes it possible, right? But
And
let
more
me ask you
clean.
a
Right.
cleaner, right? The other part of this question, Jeremy, was, do you think about the features because of your awareness to AI, meaning you know that there's transcription, you know that AI is able to do X, Y, and Z, hence you have these new requirements, or are your business requirements mutually exclusive of AI and its growth, and you just try to find how you can solve the problem and AI happens to do it? You see what I mean? There's two different
No,
approaches to this.
there's ways. So yes, so before this last little run of Open Chat or Chat GPT, I would say a lot of our stuff was like a convenient ad of AI. Now, because I've been spending a ton of time researching AI and its capacities and all the opportunities that are out there, more and more of our initiatives are based around how can we use AI in the right way, in the right format, with the right data, without kind of overwhelming or
No,
confusing the client,
no, I know
right?
what you. The thing is, like, you're spending a lot of time learning about AI. You already know a lot of stuff about doors. Can you spare us some work, Jeremy? Because some of us don't know doors. The only thing we know is the other thing. If you end up doing that too, what are we supposed to do? No, I'm just kidding, right? No, I'm just saying you're doing things that we are supposed to be doing as engineers. And we're like, oh my God, if Jeremy does everything, what is Chris supposed to do? But okay, so you are educating yourself about AI, right? Now, that is, I have a follow up question there. As a business owner, let me play the devil's advocate, right? And you
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier. You do whatever it takes. You're building doors, you're shipping doors, you want to make your customers happy, you have high profile, high end customers. Now, spending time learning or educating yourself with AI, if I were to just say a stupid thing like it's a waste of time, why would you say that it is not?
Because I like to understand what's happening around me with some type of level. And then I also like to research opportunity. So it may be a waste of time to like, I'm going to create my own. That's not what I'm trying to do. I want to understand opportunities. And the reason I do it is not as much, I mean, first and foremost is to make sure I have the best customer experience as possible, as well as having the best work environment for our employees. If there's things that I can do to help magnify their time here and improve it and make it more enjoyable, that's great. So I look at those two elements. Employees always first, right? I always employees before customers for me. They have to be happy or they'll never make products that'll make customers happy. So I have an inverted pyramid on that review. I mean, my
Makes
employees are
sense.
always right. So in the meantime, I think we can augment what we currently are doing and using some of those tools that AI is giving us to make sure that we deliver the best of the expectation, right? And make sure that we're seeing the value. And sometimes when customers are shopping purely by video, if there was an opportunity, or not video, excuse me, by pictures on the website, if there was an opportunity that we had the opportunity to visit with you and we got to see in the background, your house and like, hey, maybe this is what you like, because we were able to pick up on elements that was your style and kind and say, hey, this is, and then in your speech patterns and what the words that you were using, generating a product that is what you want. And it's around that really is personalized to you. Like, oh my
Okay.
gosh, how in the world did they know that's what I wanted? Well, we heard your voice, we heard your words, we saw your background, we saw your style, we saw your clothes, we saw your eyes, we saw your smile when you were supposed to. Like, now we know what you like and don't like. And then my goal for Murphy Door is to create literally anything in hard goods, not just doors, beds, but armoires, nightstands, tables, all the furnishings, kitchen cabinets around your house. When I say what you want, where you want, when you want, is everything that's a hard good in your home outside of right now material cloth, right? And so being able to read those key indicators with some type of automation to really personalize a product and generate a product based off your words and your visions and your face reactions, and then be able to build it. And my goal is by 2030 to be able to do that. So when
Okay.
I
So
truly say what you want, where you want, when you want, it's like I've got a 10 by 10 bedroom. I've got a queen bed, but I want two nightstands and an armoire, but I have a small room. So that armoire has to do this and this and this. And my nightstands have to do this, this, and this. And I have to have it this wide because I need to be able to open my closet door. That they can literally define all aspects of their furnishings, that we can then create it and have it leave our factory in 3 days. So
oh
that's
my
where AI and automation are coming into play. And I think the first person that can do this in manufacturing, this is hard. I mean, you think building a Tesla factory is hard? That is hard, but they're running on very, limited selections. Now you're thinking about every single person in our surrounding area that we supply and everything they want and everything they like at the dimension that they want, at the dimension that they need, right? That we're talking about a whole different level of manufacturing and customer
Jeremy,
service.
do you have another 20 minutes?
Sure,
Okay, so there's a number of things. I'm going to go as quickly as I can because the number of
sure.
things you said is just as interesting to me. So are you seeing the future of retail, like e-commerce in particular, change to be so personalized to users? In other words, if Krish were to go to the murphydoor.com and Jeremy were to go to the same site, and even
Two
if you're
different
both looking,
experiences.
two different experiences, right? So
Two
let's
different experiences.
let's dissect that little by little. The first
Hmm.
thing is you mentioned, you already said a few things. Let me recap and correct me where I'm wrong there, Jeremy. Is you said that you want to know a little bit about Krish, probably, right? Based on whatever it is that you're able to know about me, right? Either directly by, hopefully by not me answering those questions, because customers are not necessarily going to answer every single time, but there is a profile. You kind of find out where Krish is coming from, maybe
Pretty
based
easy
on
to do,
Krish.
right? You got an IP address and I can crawl the crap out of you.
Correct. Plus the social media posts too, right? Does Krish
Yeah.
post on Instagram or TikTok or
Who
Facebook? Is
is
he
he? What
looking
does he
for
like?
doors and all of the data that's coming from
Yeah.
all of these hyperscalers, right? We got a lot of data. So you kind of know who Krish is or who Jeremy is, where they're coming from. Privacy is something of concern, but with that being said, people are volunteering their information online, right? They're
Yep.
posting photos and videos of their trips in Italy and intimate moments that I don't know why people do it, but they do it, right? That's the world we're living in. So you kind of know who they are when they come to your site. So you curate a customized experience to satiate the needs of that particular customer, correct? That's step one. Personalization is changing and it's going to become more personalized too. When both of us go to the page, go to the website, Jeremy, to look at what we're looking for, sometimes you have an idea what you're looking for, right? At other times, it's like going to I don't go to Costco, but I know people who go to Costco end up buying 10 times more than what they ever wanted to buy, right? They're just subject to 25 different things. So, do you see a retail experience where somebody's coming to buy a type of door with a certain budget, but it's almost like milk at the back of the store and at Wegmans or Whole Foods, where you're actually letting them see everything else that they may not actually intend or thought they wanted to see.
I
So
love that
before they
you bring this up. So our new showroom that we're building right now in Murphy Door. So this is on a box front. I don't believe that they're going to look. I'm going to make a bold prediction, and I know that there's going to be some haters out there, and that's great. I love that. But I believe Home Depot will look like an Ace Hardware at some point. Like they believe in the endless aisle. And I don't think, I would like to imagine that D2C becomes the expectation, not B2B, that when companies, so by the way, when companies onboard like a software such as Pure Brand, like a Honda, for example, and they're going through and their customers willing to share their story on their lawnmower, and the past customer is saying my wheel's squeaky. Honda's getting to notify who their customer is. Right now they're blind because it's Home Depot that owns that data, not Honda. So they're asking you to do registration of your warranty, which only 2% acceptance rate. 2% of the people do that card. So they're still blind to 98% of their consumer base. Well, once those big D2C or B2B companies start becoming aware and finding out who their customer base is, they can do direct marketing, also lowering the price of the core product for one. So I think at any point where it's not nails, hammers, wood, or anything like that, that they can get a D2C experience from their manufacturer, it's going to happen. And Home Depot will limit the amount of SKUs. The refrigerators won't be in there. The cabinets won't be in there. All the stuff that you can currently get if manufacturing is done correctly. First. Second, back to our showroom. Now, when you walk into our showroom, it's always been like, there's this door, there's this door, there's this door, and this door. Which one do you like? We've decided to change it. We built the John Wick experience in Las Vegas. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go through that, but it's like an interactive movie experience for the
okay.
John Wick movie. So you go in, there's a bunch of escape room quasi with the movie show going along at the same time. And so we build all the passage. We built that whole thing with Lionsgate and Eakin Productions. So pretty awesome, super well received. Now I thought, well, wait a second. What if I could create an experience center? So now you're going to Murphy Door, one, to go look at Murphy Doors, two, to have the experience of what Murphy Door and products, Murphy lifestyle products deliver while walking through an experience. You got sights, you got smells, you got touch, texture, noise, sound as you pass through each room. You're going to go walk into the kitchen and it's this experience. Then you walk into a bedroom and that's experience. And behind that closet door is a red room or whatever, like a playroom and a speakeasy. And then you can start going through with all different sights, sounds, and textures. And you're like, holy crap, I came to see the pantry door, but oh my gosh, this experience and the feel and the sense and the whole thing is something you want to take home. So the goal would be that they are truly experiencing the catalog in actual tactile environments to where they can then see the need. So this showroom we're doing is to deliver a real world experience of where we want to take the then digital experience to see if that's truly the model. So I'm going to try it in actual so I can see faces, hear voices, understand what the feedback looks like. And then we can start working towards building the web environment to see how successful that is using actual number data with people.
Wow.
Did that
Beautiful.
answer your question?
Oh, it definitely did. But I'm going to go with something that's uh, uh, something that will seem unrelated, but humor me for a second. There's many reasons I love America, but you actually represent the America that I grew up thinking it was when I came here. I'll tell you. The creativity, right? The courage, the passion, the hard work, the commitment. You symbolize us as a nation. I don't know if I'm putting that in words
Oh, that's a
correctly,
compliment.
Germany. It's beautiful, right? Beautiful. But let me give you a background, right? I said I grew up in India, and the British spent a lot of time in India, as you probably know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our culture, some part of our culture comes, I understand, from the way the British did things, which is if you look at here news in India, at least it was when I moved here like decades ago, it was very seriously delivered, right? Somebody would sit on the podium or whatnot, whatever you call it, the desk. the news desk, they would have a serious face, and then they would just tell you what happened today in the stock market, what's happening in weather, maybe in politics, right? But it was the news was delivered to you with a straight face, meaning there was no real humor or emotions attached or associated with the news that was given to the people. Now, when I moved here, Jeremy, to the US, one of the first things that struck me as being very different was everything was entertainment. Even news was entertainment. I never understood that initially. Oh, somebody's telling me what's happening in the stock market, but the way it was delivered on TV was with a certain sense of entertainment, right? So I recognize that America does things very differently than perhaps how it happened in England or
For
how the
sure.
way we had done it back in India. So the reason I give you this seemingly unrelated background is because you talked about the experience at a store of buying doors, correct? Now, if I put, I'm not speaking for the British, I'm not one to begin with, but by my experience per se, you would just put a bunch of doors in a store and have people look at the door and say, you know what, you're ultimately buying a piece of wooden door, maybe wood or some other
Right? Yeah,
material,
sure.
and you're taking it to your house. Why does the experience even play a role here, right? Why should it play a role? Because when you're buying food, it's just because you have to satiate
Eat.
your appetite for the hunger, lunch, or dinner. Why should the dining experience play a role? Now, I'm not denying, because I definitely see the other side and I agree with it. But I want you to, if you could play the devil's advocate, or to what
Sure.
extent, tell us why that experience is even important to you. Why do you not believe that I'm going to put the best doors available in the world, and I don't care how they are displayed, people are going to come and grab it?
I agree that they'll buy it. I'm not going to agree that they're going to have the emotion. So, right back to the cheerleader piece. Now, if we can deliver an experience, then one, people want to be entertained, right? Right now, we've become mundane. Hollywood's terrible right now. There's no good movies. My wife and I try to go to the movie every other day.
Yeah.
We're looking for experiences. So, you see these hidden rooms, these escape rooms, the John Wick experience, Area 15. People are looking for experiences. They want to get out of the house, they don't want to stay in. You can't go really anywhere. Shopping's the same. Like I said, I do believe the Home Depots of the world are going to look like a freaking quick stop. Like they're going to go in, get the tools that they need that day, because no one wants to be in Costco. You said you don't even go. No one wants to be in Home Depot. No one does. But what if you could make your shopping experience for what it is into something that's shopping and then not only if you have the you're not just selling a door, you're selling a door and and like, right now you go in and you have these same experiences. Well, what is it that we can do different to create experiences and these feelings that people are wanting to share? So now only are you not just a shopping deal for go and see indoors, you're now like, look, I don't care if you're in Ogden, Utah at all. If you are, you need to go shop. You need to go to Murphy Door. You don't even need to buy a door, but the experience of just going through their showroom is something else. It's not like any other shopping experience at all. So then we become destinational. One, two, very Instagrammable. Like people are going to be taking their stories. Like you said, I don't know why I'm sharing my trips to Italy, but they are. So now what if you can create TikTok moments, Instagram moments, Facebook moments, Snapchat moments for their family, saying, dude, why I'm here at Murphy Door and you've never shopped like this before. Now we see that in a real world environment with this brick and mortar experience. But then if we can translate that in that same type of thing from our understandings and learnings with the brick and mortar into an internet experience, like that gives them that environment with the more AI and the more data that's being translated correctly, with all this Claude or open cloud, whatever you want to call it, data that can be aggregated so quickly. um, what if we can do that? And to me, I'd rather be on the front end with such a creative and innovative experiential type product that we have. Why not create, if it's experiential and I see faces when people go through these hidden rooms, you're like, what the crap? Like, I can give you an example behind my back. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but behind me, I'll just turn the
Right?
camera.
I see that door. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just something that nobody expects. It's sitting in the background. It's a decorative cabinet, but ultimately behind it is a bourbon collection, right? Because we have a
Wow,
plant in
it's
Kentucky,
it's beautiful. Beautiful.
right? So that's kind of the thing. So if we can do that with just that, and what about the rest of the furnishing? Am I centered okay? Um,
Yeah, you are.
what if we can do that with the rest of the furnishings in the house, give different experiences? But we do it. We already are doing it. So why not have an environment that you walk into the kitchen, you walk into the bedroom, you
Makes
walk into
sense,
the
right?
full room?
The last thing I
That's
want to
it.
ask you with that, before we go to the last segment of our conversation, Jeremy, is all of what you said there obviously makes sense, but it only make sense because your customer is spending thousands of dollars and they're a high-end clientele, so you want to create this rich experience for their shopping. But if you were selling $20 jeans at Walmart, this may not be what you go with. You might go with a different
Oh, I
approach altogether,
disagree.
right?
I don't know. Like, what if you could? So, even a bigger challenge is like, what is the experience? What is the feeling we're trying to achieve for buying this pair of jeans? What is the feeling? Like, ultimately, it comes down to the feeling on every transaction we make. It's like to your say, we're going to buy food, but at the same time, when you buy chicken, you know what it's going to taste like, and you want that. You want that sensory feedback. Well, how do we look at that environment with Levi's or t-shirts or glasses or shoes that is then part of the experience of the shoes? And then not only are you not going to go to the freaking Foot Locker, you're going to go to the foot experience. And then all of a sudden be able to experience it. How you're going to do it, I have no idea. That's not my world, but I know if I had a little bit of time, I could come up with a configuration that would kind of make
We have
sense.
no doubts listening to you for 2 hours. We know that you will come up with something that's pretty cool. So, does it mean the very last question for that is, do you then quickly see retail completely change in the way we shop, way we buy,
It
what
has
we
to.
buy, how much we buy?
It has to. It has to. Like it's been the same for 100 years.
Yeah.
Like I guess the big change was Walmart, right? When you could finally touch it, right? Or J.C. Penney. Everything was behind the counter. They brought it forward. Now you could touch. That was J.C. Penney that let people actually touch
Oh, I
product
didn't know
that
that.
wasn't having
Okay.
to be given to somebody. I read that when I was little. Like my parents bought me these little fun learning books. But anyway,
Right.
um, that being said, we're at that next transitional phase. So if big box or brick and mortar is going to be relevant, they've got to create something that is driving it. You're seeing even Macy's filed for bankruptcy, right? I mean, you're seeing these big, huge blocks that we thought were just invincible falling apart. Well, it's because they're just doing the same thing. So what is it that we have to do? Now, I don't necessarily believe it's going to be a Cabela's environment. I don't think that's necessarily it. Sure, that's fun. It's kind of experiential, but what do we do different? Like, what is the next phase? We've seen it. It's not amusement parks, but what is it? And I think that's the challenge. And we're going to try it for our market, and I believe that there's going to be opportunities for every market if the right lens is on, and you're going to spend enough time thinking about what is it that they're really trying to feel.
No,
I mean, I
makes
don't think
sense.
it's what we're trying to buy. And I think that's the lens most people view because we need the transaction. But what are they wanting to feel? And then you deliver feel.
No, makes complete sense. For the next 10 minutes, as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you questions where if you could keep them as short as you can,
Sure.
Jeremy, I want to get to as many of these questions based on everything you've told us so far. They are random in no particular order. I haven't
Okay.
even had time to make notes, so excuse the randomness of these questions. You mentioned AI, engineering. We talked a number of different things. The composition of your teams that deal with your software, how are you seeing that change? Let's say you're developers or testers. I don't know what composition it is, whether
They're
you
not
do it in
getting
house or not.
better. They're not getting better, I think. What I do see is what you said earlier. The poker table keeps changing. We have high turnover with our teams overseas. It's like it's always new learnings, new learnings, new learnings. I'm like, oh my gosh. I feel like it's slower than I expect. It never happens as the quality level that I expect, and it feels like I'm doing a lot of things twice. So I'm
Okay.
hoping either they get their crap in a pile or we're going to have to figure it out. And I don't
Okay.
want to.
So, makes sense. The next is, with AI, right? There's anxiety, right? Especially in the white collar world, right? Because AI is coming mostly after white collar jobs. They're definitely after white collar jobs before it might get to blue collar jobs. So, do you see that you need fewer people in the space of white collared engineering work because of AI than you needed in the past?
100%, and not just white collar, but blue collar. So to give you a perspective, in the blue collar side inside manufacturing, we've tripled the output over the last 3 years with the exact same headcount,
Wow. Okay, that's incredible.
right?
What about the white collar side of things? In other words, if you had like, I don't know, this is a ballparkish question. If you had 10 people that made up your engineering team per se, how many people do you kind of think you'll need given all the productivity improvements we are seeing these days?
Let's put it this way: I'd love to keep the 10 people with 10 times the output to
I
get
love to
further
hear
down the cycle.
that. Exactly what people like me, people are running software companies, want to hear. Uh, Good point. So more people can do more things using the same
Yep.
number of people that are available, essentially, right?
I've been able to get all the automation and AI agents that I've been personally putting into place without sacrificing people's jobs. So I haven't
Jobs.
added headcount. I've just said, hey, this is our headcount. Now, what's the revenue per employee that I'm trying to achieve? So that's a big metric that I use every single day. What was your RPE in each one of the departments? So revenue per person on the floor, so I can maintain a revenue per employee on an annualized basis. And at Murphy Door, we got 125 people. We're running $440,000 a year in revenue per employee.
Lovely. In hiring, let's say you're talking to somebody to fill an engineering position, right? Like a
Mhm.
software engineering position. What are some questions you would have asked 2, 3 years ago, pre AI? And how are those questions different? And what are they going to be today? What are some skills you're looking for?
Like before, I'd ask what language they're familiar with and what are they good at. What are they on the UX UI front, or are they on the stack? Are they full stack developers? And what language are they most proficient in? Now I could really care less. More of the questions are like, what are you currently good at? Are you willing to leverage AI to help us input some of the code, to at least watch the code and make sure what they're doing is right? And is there something that we can do faster? I guess one of the questions would be, how are you leveraging the tools that are available through Claude or Open, Chat GPT or Gemini, to help make your job more proficient so we can get higher output and decrease our goal time. So my goal is X, and then these are my benchmarks. What can we do to shrink the benchmark based on your ability to leverage the tools that are available? And what are you doing yourself to make sure that you're staying on top and ahead of those learning curves? So that way we're not behind, because I count on you to be so good at your job that we pay 100% of your tuition. So you better keep yourself in school, whether it be not necessarily college, but at some type of learning capacity, going to conferences, getting involved, being part of groups to stay ahead, because I need to make sure that my team's ahead.
That's a very beautifully articulated answer. I couldn't say it any better, but I'm going to make an effort for a reason to say it differently.
Okay.
Can I then say, based on that response, Jeremy, that who you're looking for now is a good problem solver, a go getter, more than a what do I say, Ruby programmer or a Golang programmer or a Python programmer, right? You're looking for an engineer who can solve problems, who can figure out what to do, how to do it better and faster, and yada 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 with these AI tools,
So
essentially.
I would say that, to make that an even shorter answer, I'm looking for a guy that is excited about what AI can do for his capacity rather than afraid of losing his job. So if you're a guy coming in here saying, I'm afraid of losing my job, you've probably already lost it. So I need the guy that's like, dude, no, like, this is freaking great. You cannot
Yeah.
believe these tools.
So
And
I
my
know, Jeremy, I
output's
know what
going to
you
be
mean,
through.
but just for the audience, you mean guy or girl, him or her,
Yeah,
right? Just
either one.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
yep,
yeah.
100%. When we have both, by the way, I have plenty. So
Uh,
that's the deal.
no, makes sense. What Where do you see, the last question is a very high level one. You've got a lot of experience in the space of engineering, right? I mean, you've not directly, you've
No, but I spent
employed a lot of,
millions. I spent
yeah,
millions.
employed a lot of people. What do you, for somebody who's entering the market, right, the workforce today, or somebody who's been in business of building this for many years, like me, for instance, right? What are some things you might say as a business owner who's actually worked with all of these people? What I mean, AI, we understand that, but more generally from a business and engineering standpoint, what do you think the future holds? If you could see the crystal ball like 2 years down the road, that here are some things that you think we should be doing as engineers and some things that we should not be focusing on as engineers.
That's a really good question. I haven't spent much time thinking about that, but I would say people are spending, at least in my world, there's more fear. They're spending all their time in fear, and they're not spending all the time in learning. When I walked into my IT department in the back here, they've got the beautiful window views, right? Because you can't get them here if they don't. The IT guys are very picky that way. So I go back there and they're like, "Oh man, I'm so nervous. What are we going to do? I'm like, what are you nervous about, bro? Like, you could be building a superpower here. Like Murphy Door's goals are through the roof with Murphy Living, Murphy Lifestyle, and all the things that we're doing. You should be the king of learning the language on how to properly prompt. Prompt engineering is where you should be focusing your time, not getting better at Java. Like, let that be it. Like, learn how to properly prompt engineer rather than try to figure out the engineering yourself. You will be surpassed in speed. But one thing that AI can't necessarily do without a proper prompt is see what our goals are and how to achieve it. Like, they only can use input data. And if we're thinking outside the box, meaning not using educated background from colleges, and we're doing things differently, then AI will not be able to see that. We need to make sure that we're experienced in doing our job in a way to see around a corner that large language models aren't able to do yet. I shouldn't say forever, they might, but at the same time, yet there's ways that we can see things that they can't.
Amazing. As we get to the end of this, before I ask you the final question, which is non technical, by the way, do you have
Sure.
any questions for me, Jeremy?
No, I would say, right now, the big thing that we're trying to look for is AI devs, like AI developers that can really start. Like, I'm not expecting them to do much other than really be involved and keep working in sandboxes on an R&D level. I don't know how to hire that. And that's been one of those things. I go to talk to my guys about it in the IT and CTO, and I'm like, what can we do? And they're like, no one wants to tell me because they think we're trying to replace them. So
Okay.
I'm not,
I
right?
can I can certainly answer that offline to you. I'm more than
Sure.
happy to do that, you know. But
That's really my
anything else you want to ask me during the podcast?
No, I guess overall, from on the pure brand perspective, where that's your background, what are your thoughts on that type of software? Currently, it's running specifically for Murphy Door. It's ready to run on a beta for clients, and I'm just wondering what the overall thought process when I explained what it does and how it does it. What were your thoughts on that software?
Well, I was very impressed. The only thing I was going to say there was you're actually creating a product, less an application. And here's what I mean by it. All of the features you mentioned, and I think you alluded to it as well, it has little to do with doors specifically or
It
beds,
has
right?
nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
Yep,
it
it's
doesn't
any
even have anything to do with furniture per se. That's
no.
kind of why I asked you the question as to the future of retail, because when you said that, Jeremy, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what, the online version of shopping is not going to look anything like the same. But now that you mentioned that, let me ask you one last thing, if it's all right. You know, we didn't talk about AI agents. Now, we don't have to go into a lot of details there, but I'm sure you're familiar with them. What I want to ask you is, when you're building these products or improving Murphy Door, creating this new product that you're working on building, how much are you, because, you know, as you definitely know that this AI agents are lock, stock, and barrel in the mix of things these days, and it's only going to
Mhm.
increase the number of agents, which means the folks, quote unquote, who are going to be looking at these websites and making those purchase decisions may or may not even be human a year down the road, right? It could be some other
Sure.
agent crawling your website to figure out what kind of purchase they need to make for their client who's also using an agent. So when you build these out, how much are you trying to build these for Homo sapiens versus machines?
So visually, contextually, it's for human, but the language that we're using is for LLM to make sure it's easily understood, digested, and educational for them to find the answers they can quickly. So that's the background work in the summaries of each product and information that we're giving on the product sheets to make sure it's very easily crawlable and making sure that we try our best to maintain the authority in that space or that particular product key.
But at
Yeah.
least the website that you have currently, your focus is mostly for humans, right? You've not sort of dumped the notion of Homo sapiens and gone to machines altogether.
No, it's still so when I said we're getting an update on Wednesday, that's going to be the configuration component. We have 3.0 being developed in the background that's working all through the LLM component that'll then come in and start replacing pages to make sure that those are the way we want them to be and very easily crawlable. And so, I mean, I can see the future where, hey, chat, order me a pizza. And it already knows my favorite pizza. It knows where I'm at and it's going to just take it. And it will say, hey, he likes this brand of pizza with this kind of toppings, and this is what it's going to be. I don't have to do anything other than, hey, order me a pizza. I think
Yep.
that'll get. So when I get to the point where it says order me a Murphy door, that they're familiar enough with my buyer habit or what I'm working on currently that it's going to go through. It's going to say, hey, this is the style, this is the kind, this is the size, this is what it is. They won't even have to be involved. So if I don't have my language written correctly for them to understand, digest, and make an exercise decision quickly, then I won't be the website that they use.
Amazing. So, my very last question to you before you can have your closing comments, Jeremy, is What is your favorite food? If you've got to name one dish that you really enjoy eating, what is it?
Well, my mother's French, right? And so I have to lean to dessert, and it's her crepes, hands down. Like I've been all over Europe, but my mother's crepes just bring a smile to my face. So I know that's not a dinner, but I would choose that over dinner every single day of my life. But if your question is for dish, it's 100% sushi for dinner.
Wow, I talked to somebody last week on the podcast and he said sushi, and I told him that the number of times people have told me that sushi was their favorite food on the podcast, Jeremy, it's an insane number. It's almost like I'm running this podcast from Japan and not like Northern Virginia, because the number of times people tell me it's sushi, I'm looking to see. There's only one person who told me it was Indian food. I was like, okay, that's great. No, everybody else has said sushi so far. Okay, that's
It's
amazing.
because I don't feel heavy when I'm done.
I
I feel satiated, and that's it.
Well, you want to feel heavy and you don't want to feel like working and you want to go take a nap. An Indian meal is probably in order.
Yeah, for
It will
sure, and I
certainly
love it. We have
make.
a great Indian restaurant right down the road, and I love it. I love Indian food, but it's not a great lunchtime meal.
No, it's
But a
not.
sushi
No.
piece is fine. I can still work without going to bed.
Oh, beautiful. I'm going to give a final reintroduction to you, and then you can have the closing comments.
Sure.
Folks, again, here we spoke to Jeremy Barker, the founder and CEO of Murphy Door. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation and the learnings along the way, because it's not every day that I have an opportunity to talk to somebody who is running a business that's one slightly different from mine, at least, at the core of it, right? Even though it has a big software component. And two, who's very passionate about running the business, right? Running a business, running it very well, and is very futuristic in the thought process of improving the engineering features and components and whatnot. So it was absolutely incredible. It was my pleasure. I will include the link to Jeremy's the murphydoor.com, the actual product company link, and I have no doubts. I mean, I'm curious to check out the doors myself and maybe save up some money. Even if I can afford the $100,000 ones, I'm sure I can buy something
That's all
that I
right.
can afford. Yeah,
You will. Just hey,
yeah.
discipline and focus and persistence, and you'll get there.
Thank you. And any closing
Thanks, Dan.
comments, Jeremy, to our audience before you
No,
go?
I just like to say, business isn't for everyone. I think we have this false belief that hey, we want to do it. Sometimes it's just too hard. The wrong aspiration of money will never get you to your destination. So aspirations don't always equal destination. And if you're waiting for something that you love to do, you're probably not ever going to start. Like you need to find something other than the it to love. You have to love the ride of the journey. Like the journey is truly what you have to learn to enjoy. That would be the ups and the downs of the business, and looking at the downs as a learning lesson and an opportunity for improvements, and knowing that the next hill you climb is much higher and much harder, and there's a reason, because it's getting you to a place that less people are. So every time you go down and up, I mean, it's just like any graph that we watch, right? They go up and down. Well, we just don't get to feel it because it's on paper, but if we're living it, it hurts sometimes. We feel like we're going backwards. And usually if you can have that perspective of going backwards is really just getting ready to go up a much steeper hill to a much better place that's going to be harder but worth it, is a perspective that is not for everyone, but is absolutely enjoyable once you can step back and enjoy that. You just have to learn that's the fun.
Jeremy, I really hope one day I know if you teach, like part time or for pro bono or whatever. If you don't, I highly recommend you consider that, because the learnings that you have and the way you articulate those learnings, they don't necessarily happen in all classrooms or in most classrooms or in any classroom, for the most part, right? And I think everyone deserves to have those learnings, right? Because you're imparting, this knowledge for free on this podcast. So I'm thankful that you were able to offer a 2-hour lesson on running a business. And even if you never sold a door, as somebody who's watching this, they don't have to. They could
No,
be, like you said at the very top of this conversation, they could be selling AI software, they could be selling potatoes, they could be selling houses, they could be selling cars. It does not matter. Everything that you've provided by virtue of lessons that you've offered, Jeremy, has been absolutely spot on. So
well,
thank
thank you.
you very much for taking the time. Just stay for a minute or two
Sure.
after I stop recording here. But folks, again, this is Jeremy Barker. Definitely check out Murphy Door. Make all the purchases. Get the coolest door you can possibly get your hands on. And with that, I'm going to end this podcast. Thanks, Jeremy.
Sure. You're welcome. And by the way, they can follow on Instagram too, Jeremy Barker, or my website, jeremybarker.com.
Awesome. We'll include all of those links. Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you.